I was 12 going on 13 the first time I saw a dead human being. It happened in the summer of 1959, a long time ago, but only if you measure it in terms of years.
Hello and welcome once again to the Cine-Files, where we are continuing our season of Rob Reiner. My name is Steve Morris. I'm a filmmaker and directing instructor in Los Angeles, California.
Hello, everyone. My name is John Rocha. I'm a writer, producer, and host in San Diego, California. And Steve, we have finally come to the end of the season, or the beginning of the end of the season of Rob Reiner. Yeah, because we go into our final film that was very strongly and loudly requested from a lot of our listeners to explore this film. And it's a film I have not seen in a very, very long time. And this is, I hope, going to be a fun 1 or 2 part discussion.
Yeah, it's funny. I wasn't reaching for Stand By Me, the movie that we're doing today. Like, not that I haven't always liked it. I've always liked it. It's just never been my favorite, of the Rob Reiners that I went back to. I went much more back to Princess Bride and Harry Met Sally and Misery and all, than I did this, and A Few Good Men, of course, which we just did. But you're right. We had so many people, both on our Patreon and on social media, saying, well, obviously you have to do Stand By Me. Of course you're going to do Stand By Me. And it's interesting, too. I feel like now that we're doing these longer seasons, and they are quite long, is that it's like you and I get a chance to really live with the director in a way. And I'm really kind of happy that it worked out the way we did, that we're ending with this movie that is such a cathartic and evolutionary film for Rob Reiner himself.
Yeah, 100% agree. It's, as you said, it's not one of the ones that people talk about as like the masterpieces of Rob Reiner's career, or these ones but it is one that clearly has burrowed into the soul of a lot of film goers, a lot of our fans. And sometimes you and I can be guilty of not feeling the same way about a movie that a majority of our fandom does. And that's a great challenge for us to go and revisit the film in service of our fandom, so that we can see how we look at this film now, all these years later, and explore it through the eyes and the prism of some of the comments from our fans and some of the comments from our advisory board as well, who were also very excited that we were doing Stand By Me. So this is going to be an interesting discussion, an interesting experience with you having this conversation.
I agree. And of course, we couldn't be having this discussion without our incredible supporters on patreon.com/thecine-files, as well as Apple Podcasts, where they are right now listening to an ad-free version of this episode. They can also listen to our Cine-Files shorts. We just recorded a very personal and meandering and interesting one, I think, about finding good life balance. So that's the short this week. And you can get those both on Patreon and Apple Podcasts at the $5 a month level.
Yeah. And by the way, you can also support our show by, if you do listen to the show with the ads, if you hear a product or a service that you want to try out, you can use our code to try those products and services or goods out, and you'll get a bunch of percentage off, and you'll indicate to those companies that they should keep supporting us here on the Cine-Files every month. And we've got so many amazing companies that have come on now to support us, like Quince, Mars Men. So many. True Diagnostic has been tried and true with us for quite some time here. Steve BetterHelp is part of our sponsorships now too. So we've been getting more and more of them as the year has gone on. It's been really nice. So the way you can support us is by trying out their products and services and using our code. That would help us out a lot as well.
So John,
yes,
do you remember how you first came to Stand By Me?
Oh, yeah. In the movie theater with a bunch of friends in Dale City, Virginia, seeing this thing, probably with my best friend, Maurice, and my other best friend, Jim, from back home in high school, going to see it together and just like kind of experiencing this film. And I was in a deep Stephen King phase at the time because I was catching up on all his books and reading all his stuff. And so there was a lot of ways that this came together at just the right time. And I remember seeing this with them and having conversations afterwards at the mall, like going to the food court at the mall and sitting and talking about what we had just seen. So yeah, it was a heck of a film. And I remember it being in rotation for a long while afterwards, and then just kind of fell off the last few decades as something that I would go back to and watch.
I really wonder if young people understand today what we're saying when we're saying it was in the rotation. because today anything they want to watch at any time, they can watch it. You don't have to have it. You could just watch whatever you want. Whereas we would go, okay, hey, let's go to the video store and rent some movies. And we would rent 3 movies or 4 movies for the weekend. And there were movies that were frequently one of them, you know?
Yes.
Like The Terminator was frequently one of them. Big Trouble in Little China was frequently one of them at my house. So, and I'll tell you one that was definitely frequently one of them was The Sure Thing, Rob Reiner's previous movie. I rewatched it recently, wondering if I would still love it. I absolutely still love it. And what I realized watching it recently was like, oh, it was The Sure Thing that taught me and a bunch of my friends how to be young college guys. We were quoting that movie and the sense of humor in that movie and all of that. So by the time Stand By Me is coming out, all of us went. It's just like we all went to see it in the movie theater together. It got rented many, many times. And the big one too, this is in the era for me of soundtracks. So the Stand By Me, along with like the Footloose soundtrack and the Animal House soundtrack and the Big Chill soundtrack, was just in the rotation of my cassette player in my car too. I listen to this all the time.
Oh yeah, this and the Dirty Dancing soundtrack.
Dirty Dancing, totally.
Right, these were the 2 soundtracks that like got you into the oldies. There was always an oldie station and you knew some of the songs, but when you were listening to both of these soundtracks, you were like, oh, there's some great songs here that I still listen to on the oldie station. I get called I get called an old man all the time by my lady outlaw because I love listening to this stuff, and I have to believe that it was these movies and their soundtracks that put the hook in me about these 1950s, 1960s songs for sure.
It's so clear. It's so clear to me how it happened for me because I'm the same oldies guy, and for me, the number one reason I became an oldies guy is Happy Days. Yeah. So Happy Days started it. And then and then John Lennon died in 1980. And so that's when I started being a Beatles person. Oh, yeah, right. And then there was also the American Graffiti soundtrack, the Animal House soundtrack was a huge one. Yes. And like I said, the Big Chill soundtrack. And so like, because of all those things, I was a well-established oldies listener, you know, at this point. I have a little bit of pre-production, not too much. Obviously, this starts with Stephen King. And it started because he wanted to write something about the guys he grew up with. Yeah. And he couldn't come up with anything. So he started writing things and then putting things away. And to me, the idea of like, if Stephen King can't keep writing on it, I mean, like what's happening? And what he finally figured out was he needed something that brought them together. Like, why are they doing this? And finally, he came up with the idea of they're going to look for a body. And as soon as he came up with they're going to, like, it felt like all the characters were there from guys that he knew, all sorts of things, but he just needed that destination. And that's how it became The Body. It was a novella published in arguably the most successful collection of novellas of all time in terms of cinema, because this is the collection is called Different Seasons. The first novella in the collection is Rita Hayworth and Shawshank Redemption, which of course becomes The Shawshank Redemption. The second story is the one Stephen King story I refuse to ever read again. It was so horribly upsetting to me, and that is Apt Pupil.
Oh, Apt Pupil, right. That became a movie with
that became the Bryan Singer movie.
Yeah.
Then The Body, which becomes Stand By Me. And the fourth one is a story called The Breathing Method, which I doubt will ever be made into a film. But 3 out of 4 books, 2 of them, some of the great movies of all time. And while my feelings about Bryan Singer have certainly changed, Apt Pupil is a good movie.
Yeah.
Not when I don't want to revisit it.
That's a tough watch, that movie, for God's sake.
Dude, the novella is so much tougher. It is so horrible. Oh my God. I'm listening because it's just I can't. Being in the heads of those characters is like I never ever want to do this again.
That's great.
It was picked up by Karen Gideon, who is the wife of writer Raynold Gideon. She loved this novella, gave it to him. He loved it, gave it to his writing partner Bruce Evans. They both loved it, and they said, "This is our next movie." So they go to their agents. They go to, we want to buy the rights from Stephen King. Stephen King asked for $100,000 for the rights, plus, which is okay. That is, you know, the guy's a huge novelist. Standard. That's not totally unreasonable. Plus 10% of the gross. Now, 10% of the gross for the novelist up front, there's no screenplay written. There's no actor attached. There's no studio attached, no director attached, no budget. You can't give away that much money that early because let's say a big actor is coming along or a big director, where they're going to want pieces of that gross too, and you've already given a bunch away. So suddenly this begets to be there's a big negotiation. So they try to bring in Adrian Lyne, and and so he is going to direct it. They get King to come down a little bit on his percentage. They start shopping around to studios. Stephen King novella written by this guy, directed by Adrian Lyne. Every single studio turns it down.
Wow.
Except Embassy Studios. They finally negotiate with them, and one of the big stumbling blocks is Evans and Gideon. They want to be producers, but they're not very expensive producers, so they're going to bring in an experienced producer, and that's Andy Scheinman, of course, worked a bunch with Rob Reiner.
Yes.
But that means we have more percentages to give away because, of course, he wants his cut. So what basically ends up happening is that the two screenwriters who were pushing this forward, they kept reducing their cut and their pay in order to get Stephen King rights and get Adrian Lyne and get Andy Scheinman. They start working on the script.
Yeah.
And suddenly Adrian Lyne gets another gig and he can't start very soon. So now the whole thing's getting pushed down the line. So Andy sends the script over to his buddy, Rob Reiner. Oh, wow. And Rob looks at it, goes, there's a lot of promise, but it has no focus. But he does sign on to direct it. So they're just about to start shooting. They're working for Embassy Pictures, and Embassy gets bought by Columbia. And this happens a lot. This happened to my Shark Show when Nat Geo that I was working for got bought out by Fox. They cancel all the products that the other management has brought in, because this is a classic Hollywood problem, which is like, okay, if I use the project the previous team, they're gone. If I use the project they developed and it sucks, I look bad.
Right.
If I use the project they developed and it's awesome, I don't look good.
Right.
So frequently people will just wipe out the whole slate when new management comes in, which is what happened. They dumped everything. So now we're a movie without a destination.
Right.
And so what's crazy to me is it's 3 times that Rob Reiner goes to his hero, and that is Norman Lear. Norman Lear came in and paid for Spinal Tap. Norman Lear swept in to pay for Princess Bride, and Norman Lear put up $7.5 million of his own money to make Stand By Me.
Wow.
Isn't that amazing?
That is amazing. But, this is why relationships are important in that town. You just never know what situation you're going to find yourself in. But also it speaks to how much people believed in Rob Reiner, right? I mean, they're willing to sink so much of their own money into something like this to see if it's going to work. This isn't, this is a pretty amazing situation for him.
Yeah,
I just keep getting thought of what the Adrian Lyne's body would be completely different than Stand By Me. It'd be much more sexual. I don't know. It'd be way different. So, yeah.
Well, I think what's so remarkable to me is, what is Stephen King known for? He is the king of horror.
Horror. Yeah.
And that's not what Stand By Me is. And honestly, that's not what Shawshank is either. Is that I believe that Shawshank and Stand By Me are the 2 greatest films made from Stephen King works. And they are the most human and the least horror of anything else that is made,
Yeah, but in a lot of ways, I think it's also like a horror that is much more resonant than something like The Exorcist. Or not The Exorcist, sorry, The Shining. Because in Shawshank Redemption, you're railroaded as an innocent man into prison. And what would that experience be like? You're raped for quite some time in that movie. They don't show you every single time it happens, but they allude that it happened a few times to him. And yet he has to find a way from that horror of his life into something better. And the same thing with Stand By Me. We have all of these kids who are coming from what you could argue are horrific upbringings. One kid dealing with the loss of his brother and how that's affected his parents. The other kid coming from a father who abused him and burnt his ear and is a Vietnam vet with PTSD. The other kid who's clearly the kid they look over because he's chubby and no one wants to talk to him. And then the other kid who is the River Phoenix character who has an older brother and who's mean to him, and his father's probably an extension of that. So that is more like a real life horror that you're dealing with. And I think I hear what you're saying in that it's not the typical approach to horror, but I think there is the elements there that feels more resonant than something that's a little more otherworldly or metaphysical. And I think that's the gift of both of these movies, honestly.
I think you put your finger on it. And for me, it's like, I'm not sure if Stephen King is the author I've read the most books of. He's certainly top 3, damn close. I don't like horror movies. I actually don't read Stephen King to get scared, even though some of his books are really scary. That's not the draw. And the thing that you're pointing out, when his books are really good, and they're not always really good, but when they are really good, it's the humans. It's the connection to the characters.
100%.
That's what makes them great. Yes, he can really scare the crap out of you, but that's not his great. I mean, yes, I guess people will say that's his greatness, but I think what we're focusing in on in Stand By Me and Shawshank is what you're describing. It's the real human struggle with real pain, you know? Yeah. So the movie began shooting on June 17th, 1985 in Brownsville, Oregon, shot for a couple of months. And that is all the pre-production I have. Yeah. Would you like to jump into the film?
Yeah, let's do it.
So the movie starts, and immediately you see that it's being distributed by Columbia, which is weird since they dumped the movie that in the last story I told, and I will explain how we ended up there when we get to the end. We see a Jeep sitting alone on a street, and then the music comes in, and it is referencing Stand By Me. And they knew from the very, very beginning, not that Stand By Me was going to be the title. The title was the body for most of the production. But they knew that it would be the music, and the score would definitely reference it.
Right.
The composer is Jack Nietzsche, who I knew nothing about.
Okay.
He is interesting.
Okay.
So he is an old school music guy, musician, played many instruments. He was a player in the original recording of Stand By Me. He was in the session.
Wow.
And as a session musician, he worked with a bunch of people, and he started doing novelty music, joke songs with his partner, Sonny Bono.
Wow.
And then through Sonny Bono, because who was Sonny Bono working for but Phil Spector?
Right.
So he became a producer and wrote songs and session artist for Phil Spector. And he worked with Ike and Tina Turner, Carole King. He worked with Doris Day. He was on Rolling Stones tracks. He worked with Ry Cooder, Neil Young. I mean, this guy did all sorts of stuff before turning to music in the early 70s, where I'm assuming we mentioned his name, although I didn't remember this whole story because he worked on The Exorcist and on One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, which he won and on One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. He wrote the song Up Where We Belong, where he won the Oscar.
What?
Yep.
That's a great song. It's a karaoke staple of mine. I love that song.
He wrote songs for Starman, Officer and a Gentleman, Razor's Edge, and Cannery Row. Okay. So that's an interesting guy. Also, his name's Jack Nietzsche, which I think is a cool handle.
Agreed. 100% agreed.
And we see a man sitting in a Jeep, and there is Richard Dreyfuss.
Yeah. What can you say about Richard Dreyfuss? I mean, just so much that he's been a part of here. Of course, we've covered so many of his movies, but I like him in this film. It's an interesting decision to use him in this film. And is there any because I don't think he'd worked with Rob Reiner before. So was there any background on booking him in the movie? I mean, this is also Richard Dreyfuss in that weird kind of transition. He's no longer that 70s skinny, irritating kind of guy who's the lead in all these films. Yeah. It's a much more spotty track record through the 80s as we go into the 90s. So it's interesting to see him be a part of this film, but his voiceover is incredible throughout the whole film.
Well, it's funny that you ask how he ended up in the film, and it's also funny that you mentioned his voiceover, because Richard Dreyfuss was not the original casting for this role. They shot the entire role with a different actor, and then brought him in to do the voiceover, and Rob Reiner did not like how he did the voiceover. And that actor is David Duke.
Oh, yes. Wow. I have to say, I saw David Duke in London in 1998 in Art, the play Art.
Oh, yeah, good play.
With him and George Wendt, and I think it was Stacy Keach. Your boy Stacy Keach.
It could be. That sounds like something he'd be in.
I think I still have the program. And we were there studying in London. Vogel, all of us were there studying. And I remember David Duke came and spoke to our class. He was a really nice guy. Sadly passed away a few years ago, I think from cancer or something. But he was a really nice guy. Wow, how crazy. I didn't know that. Oh, that's great.
So they finished the film, and now they bring him in to do the voiceover. And Rob is like, this isn't working. Like, this is not working. So he calls up some of his friends. So the first person he calls up is Michael McKean, who obviously he worked on Spinal Tap with.
Sure.
So and this is just to record the voiceover. So he comes in now because this character barely speaks. So he was like, well, maybe we'll just keep David Duke and we'll have the voice be a different person's voice. So Michael McKean comes in and does the voice. Doesn't quite work. And then he calls up another buddy of his because he went to high school with Richard Dreyfuss. They've known each other forever. And he says, hey, Richard, do you mind coming and trying this out? So Richard Dreyfuss comes in and it's perfect. He just nails it. Absolutely. And Dreyfuss, as he gets to the end, he goes, okay. And Rob's like, okay, I guess we'll use your voice. And Dreyfuss goes, well, if you're going to use my voice, maybe use me. So they reshoot it with him.
That is such a Richard Dreyfuss thing to do.
Right?
Why don't you put me on camera? Oh, that's so perfect.
And of course, I made up what he said. I'm not actually quoting him, but something went down like that. And we see that we're looking down at a newspaper that says attorney Christopher Chambers fatally stabbed in restaurant. We see two kids riding their bikes down the road and he watches them go. And I think it's so important that he sees kids at this moment.
Yeah, right. Because it's what sparks the memory of all of this and we don't know right at the beginning of the movie who Chris Chambers really is to him, right? We just see him sitting there alone. And I imagine this is a perfect movie for this time, right? Because this is when baby boomers are coming into this age and looking back and reflecting on their youth and whatever and the experiences that they have. So in a way, he's reflecting what a lot of the audience at the time was probably experiencing in their own ways, in different ways in their worlds, And so it kind of hit that sweet spot for what it was doing, and seeing those kids ride by is just perfect for feeling that, or giving us a foreshadowing of where we're going with this movie and the kids we're going to go see in flashback.
Totally. And it's funny. It just occurs to me. So we mentioned that we recorded this short talking about one of the things we were talking about was our old friends from childhood that came up. And I also think in a weird way, the whole thing we were talking about was what you get when you go out to look for a body with your best friends and spend a lot of time with them in the real world. In a way, that was kind of the conversation. Yeah. So it really relates to that.
I was 12 going on 13 the first time I saw a dead human being. It happened in the summer of 1959, a long time ago. But only if you measure in terms of years.
Because nostalgia is not linear, right? So it's like this idea of it feels like yesterday. It always feels like yesterday, even though it was 40 years ago, right?
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure you have them. There are things I can remember from 12 that are crystal clear, and there are huge gaps of last week I'm not entirely sure about.
I still have conversations with people from 12 years old out loud sometimes if the memory becomes too strong in a moment. Yeah.
And then we dissolve to old magazines, and now we're back in time, and there we see Wil Wheaton, who plays Gordy.
Yeah, Wil Wheaton. I mean, of course, all of you know him from Star Trek Next Generation, still very much in our life, doing so many things that he has done through the years, kind of popping in and out, doing like the Big Bang Theory and things of that nature. Very much a personality now. He's a blogger, a narrator. He's worked in a number of things. And we've seen him all over our TVs and occasionally on film as well. So it's nice to remember that he looks unrecognizable from the guy he is now. Seeing him as a young boy, it was so great to revisit that again.
Yeah, I think. I mean, honestly, I'll say for all of the kids, this might be their best performances for all of them. Ooh. Like obviously River has some other great performances.
Yes.
But what they do, these child actors, is really incredible in this film. Yeah. And what Rob says that I find really interesting is that he says when you're casting kids this young, you have to cast for who they are. Yeah. They don't have the craft yet to become a different person. Yeah. And what he found with what he was looking for, the character of Gordy, and what he found really strongly with Wil Wheaton was sensitivity and intelligence. That's what he was looking for.
Well, Sheila Benson of the LA Times called Wil Wheaton a gem in the movie because of the sensitive performance that Rob Reiner was able to get from him. And I agree. Like, looking back, watching it again, he is so good.
I was living in a small town in Oregon called Castle Rock. There were only 1,281 people, but to me, it was the whole world.
I do think it's because obviously all of Stephen King is in Maine, and Castle Rock is supposed to be a Maine place. And it's interesting to me that they moved it to Oregon, which is, of course, where they shot it.
Right.
And we hear, and this is what we're going to hear throughout. Right now, we got Rockin' Robin playing on the radio. We're heading to this treehouse. And he knocks on the treehouse, climbs inside. Stephen King apparently had a little fort hideout like this where he and his buddies sat and played cards.
I knock. 29.
22.
Piss up a rope.
Immediately, we see River Phoenix as Chris Chambers and Corey Feldman as Teddy, and they are smoking cigarettes and playing cards.
Yeah, as you did back then, of course. And River Phoenix, sadly passed away at only 23 years old in 1993, not much longer after this film came out. He is Joaquin Phoenix's brother, Rain Phoenix's brother, and part of this itinerant family, very famous itinerant Hollywood family. And sadly only did a few things, but in his short life was nominated for a Best Supporting Actor award for Running on Empty, which is a film nobody talks about. People forget about.
It's really good.
Judd Hirsch and Christine Lottie. Yeah, I mean, you know how many times I've wanted to start an 80s podcast where I just revisit old 80s films that no one talks about anymore? It would be such a blast to do something like that. But
can I be an occasional guest on this
Of course, yes, depending on the film, yes. He also did Explorers, which a lot of people love, and The Mosquito Coast, which I thought is a damn good one with him and Harrison Ford. Yeah,
I really liked Mosquito Coast, and my memory is it's one of the most intense, crazy performances from Harrison Ford ever.
Yeah.
Because stuff that he doesn't get to do very often. So originally, River Phoenix was auditioning for Gordy and up for the role of Gordy.
Wow.
And the actor in the, with the best chance of getting the role of Chris was Ethan Hawke.
I mean, that could have worked 100%. Yeah.
And I think if I understand it correctly, it's when Wil Wheaton came in and they're like, oh no, this is Gordy. That suddenly they started thinking, and this is why you have chemistry reads, because it could be that Ethan as Chris and River as Gordy worked really well. But then Ethan as Chris to Wil Wheaton's Gordy did not work well.
Yeah.
And I'm telling you, the River Phoenix Wil Wheaton connection and chemistry is incredible in this.
Great dynamic.
Yeah. By the way, in case you are concerned, these cigarettes are apparently filled with cabbage leaves. And that is what they're smoking. And the thing he was really looking for with the character of Chris was he needed someone who was wise and could have the strength to be a peacemaker. That's what River Phoenix delivers,
Yeah, in a number of moments in the movie for sure.
And what he was looking for with Corey Feldman playing Teddy was anger. And frankly, Corey had real pain in his life and real anger, and that's coming out in this movie.
Still, he is still in our lives complaining. I mean, he was upset that he was not invited to be at the Oscar celebration of Rob Reiner. He was vocally upset that he was not allowed to walk on that stage.
I get it.
Yeah, I get why he's upset, and I also get why they didn't bring him up. Because he's had some accusations, he's made some accusations. It's a bit of an uncomfortable situation all around for this guy, but he's still around, and he's got so many incredible films to his name with Gremlins and Goonies and this one here, The Lost Boys, License to Drive, Dream a Little Dream. A lot of people have nostalgic, warm feelings about Corey Feldman in those movies. And I might agree with you, Steve. I love him in this film. He has that electric, unsettled energy that I remember from kids I grew up with military parents who had PTSD from Vietnam, and the anger and the frustration and the fierce love they had for their fathers, even if their fathers were abusing them. So there's a lot of what Teddy is like in this film that I've seen in real life. And so it's a great performance.
Teddy Duchamp was the craziest guy we hung around with. He didn't have much of a chance in life. His dad was given to fits of rage. One time he held Teddy's ear to a stove and almost burned it off.
And we see that ear in the shot. Yeah. And that is, we're like 4 minutes into this movie, maybe. And that is some heavy shit because I think your point is really key, which is that this is about all of these kids are dealing with serious, real human stuff.
Yeah. And this is all horror to a child. A father who burns their ear.
Oh my God. Yeah. And of course, they're giving each other shit, and we hear a whole bunch of it as they're playing cribbage. You ever play cribbage?
No, I have no idea what cribbage. I thought that was old lady stuff. I don't know what a cribbage is. What cribbage?
My dad played cribbage.
Oh.
Cribbage is one of those games that I every time I had to relearn it every time because I didn't play it enough. But
oh wow.
but I'm sure he would have opinions on how they're playing and what mistakes they might be making on every hand.
Chris Chambers was the leader of our gang and my best friend. He came from a bad family, and everyone just knew he'd turn out bad, including Chris.
It's a great line of voiceover. Just nailed. If you can do 2 sentences of voiceover and really, really get a character, that's perfect.
Yeah.
And then we hear a knock, but it is not the secret knock. And it's Vern. By the way, so they had rehearsal.
Yeah.
This was so what Rob Reiner did was, and he likes rehearsal anyway, but he knew that it was super important that he get real rehearsal time with the kids because he's asking a lot of them. There aren't a lot of movies with 4 kids of this age that essentially are on screen almost the entire film and have to do this level of emotional stuff. So he scheduled a rehearsal, and the first week, all he did was theater games, improv games, just playing around. Because he really wasn't trying to teach him how to act. Yeah. What he wanted to do was really build relationships between these kids so that they really felt like friends. So the first week was all improvisation around relationships. And then the second week was very serious rehearsal, really doing blocking, really working things out. And the thing is, he is part of the improvs. And so Rob is just acting like a big kid. He's sweet and he's goofy and he's making them laugh and making them feel really comfortable and building that sense of relationships and comfort that he knows they're going to need when they go out on the set with all the cameras and all the crew and all the pressure and stuff.
Smart.
Yep.
When you have a director that understands how to direct children, it's really important, dude. Yeah.
And one of the things that they worked out in the rehearsal was that Vern had forgotten the secret knock. So they make fun of him for that. And then in comes Jerry O'Connell playing Vern in his very first movie.
Yeah, very first movie. Had been, I think, in a Duncan Hines commercial before this, then nailed this, and then, went on to have a pretty decent career as an actor here, still working recently as a voice on Star Trek Lower Decks. Of course, his wife since 2007 is Rebecca Romaine, who is #1 on the Star Trek Strange New World. So you've got Wil Wheaton and Jerry O'Connell, who is Star Trek adjacent. They're connected through the Star Trek stuff as well. But he was also in My Secret Identity. Of course, people love him as Quinn Mallory in Sliders. He was in Joe's Apartment, that MTV movie that was spawned off those little mini sketches during the 90s on MTV. The Cushman and Jerry Maguire is so good in that. Derek in Scream 2. Charlie Carbone in the legendary Kangaroo Jack. Also been in TV shows like Crossing Jordan. He was in Piranha 3D. So yeah, constantly working, constantly doing his thing. He's been hosting. He's been hosting on the CBS talk show. I think The Talk or what it's called. He was on there for a very long time as well as kind of a male voice amongst all this kind of stuff. And recently got himself in some hot water, Steve, because he spoke out about how he has some political differences with his wife and his daughters. And that became a whole thing on social media about who's the real man in the family type of thing. But wow. I've always had a soft spot for him since this movie, and I've always loved him. And I think one of the big reasons he stays in the shape that he does is because he is permanently on film as this chubby kid. You know what I'm saying? Like, that would motivate me every day.
Believe me, I know exactly what you're saying. And it's so funny. So for Gordy, he wanted sensitive and intelligent. For Chris, he wanted calm and intelligent and ability to be a peacemaker. For Teddy, he wanted angry and a crazy edge. And we see how he got all of those things.
Yeah.
With Vern, he wanted someone very sweet, very innocent, kind of goofy, and always a little bit behind on what's going on. Not 100% up to speed all the time. And so he's very inexperienced. He comes in for the audition, and it's just what I said. Rob improvises with him. It's all about play.
Right.
And little Jerry O'Connell, he's 11 years old. He's just like, who is this big guy? Like, what is this? I don't understand what this is. But there's something in the back of his head that makes him feel like he knows this guy, but he can't figure out what it is. And then they're finishing up the thing where he played with Rob Reiner a bunch, and then they leave the audition, and he's down the hallway when suddenly he realizes that that's Meathead from All in the Family, and he runs back in and points at Rob Reiner. He's like, "You're Meathead. You're Meathead," and like points at him like that. I think that's what got him the part.
It sounds like it would get him the part.
Yeah.
And I love these 4 choices, Steve, right? And I love the characters that they represent because when you're a kid, you don't know, well, I'm going to be friends with this person because of this, this, and this. You just instinctively gravitate to the people you gravitate. And I imagine because all 4 of them come from some level of unrest in their homes, they found a commonality with each other. But as we see later, of course, at the end of the film, they drifted apart eventually. But because it was this time and this moment that they were connected because of the shared communal unsteadiness in their own homes.
Yeah, I think particularly young friendships. I mean, you don't have a lot of choice in your first grade class or your second grade class or your third grade class. You got to pick from who's there. Yeah. And so you're not getting looking for the ideal person. You're like, oh, you like comic books? I like comic books. And then that's it. That's all you need. You're off to the races.
Exactly. Yeah.
So he's rehearsing with all these kids. And the big thing is, and why he's rehearsing so much, is that basically the general rule is if you're going to shoot with kids, you're going to shoot in coverage. So you're going to get close-ups and singles and masters and over the shoulders and all this stuff because you know the kid's only going to be good once. And so, or you can only guarantee that they're going to be good once. So you want to have a single of them so you can cut together the film you want. Rob didn't want to do that. He wanted things to play out in long shots. Well, if you want everything to play out in a long shot, every kid has to be good from the beginning of the long shot to the end of the long shot, which is why he needed the rehearsal time. And to me, it's not at the same level. But to me, it's almost like Spielberg choosing to shoot Jaws on the real ocean, is that the degree of difficulty went way up because of this choice, is that now these actors have to deliver. And they really do. And there's so much of this all plays out in one shots.
Oh, man, you guys are not going to believe this. This is so boss. Oh, man, wait to hear this. Wait to hear this. You won't believe it. It's unbelievable. Let me catch my breath. All right, all the way from my house.
And Jerry O'Connor is so great at doing that. And B, the constant shit giving, because when he says, I ran all the way from the house, the kids burst into,
I ran all the way home. Come on, you guys listen to me. This is boss. Come on. Sorry.
And Vern's trying to get his information out, and they keep singing and not letting him get away with it. And you are immediately locked into this friendship.
Yeah, it's a great introduction for all 4 of them, for sure.
Here's the thing I was thinking. Rob Reiner does such a great job of nailing childhood in this era for this group of people. And the thing that I was thinking about is like, in order to do this, you can't just have a vision of what being a kid is like from the outside. You actually have to remember how it feels on the inside, what it's really like. You can't direct it. There's so many movies where you see them filming kids and you're like, that's not really kids. That's a performance of kidhood. That's not how this movie feels. And I kind of put it with the magical understanding of high school kids that John Hughes had, is like he made that feel real. And Rob Reiner is making this world feel real right now.
Yeah. Agreed with that.
You guys want to go see a dead body?
That's the line of the movie. The line of the movie.
And they all sit up and he starts telling this story about when he was under the porch digging. And we cut to a flashback of him under the porch digging. By the way, this is a very difficult scene to light because he wanted us to feel really enclosed by that the roof, which is essentially the floor. We're in the crawl space under the house. Well, that means if you can see the roof, there's nowhere to put lights. And the thing about the set is we have all these holes in the dirt where Vern has been digging, but we can't light them because we can't put lights above because they would be seen. And so this is a real lighting challenge. And it's very similar to what we talked about on The Great Escape, where we had the tunnel. Oh, yeah. And he wanted you to feel super enclosed in the tunnels, which is great. But then, okay, how do we light the whole thing?
Right.
And what we hear is that Vern buried a jar of pennies under the house to keep them safe. But Johnny drew a map. But then his mom cleaned out the house and threw away the map, and he's lost all the pennies.
The shot of the holes in the ground that he's already dug, and he's just desperately looking. It's so great to have a character like this, because it is tough to make a character like this and make them likable. And the whole time, he is so likable because of his energy, because the kids pick on him. You feel for him. You feel sympathy for him because he's not a malicious kid who's dumb. He's just kind of a little dumb, but it's in a naive way, And by the way, Vern is secretly right. Watching this movie again, Vern is secretly right about everything that happens. If they had listened to Vern, they would have never experienced what they experienced. That's the negative side of it. But Vern would have kept them safe if they had listened to him throughout the whole movie. He's secretly the smartest one out of all of them in this movie. If you pay attention to the things he tells them not to do at certain moments.
I don't think he's the smartest one, but I agree with you. He's right on just about everything.
Yes.
And think about good their hair would have looked if he had that comb for the whole movie.
100%.
So as he's searching for these pennies, his brother and his friend comes out, and this is Casey Siemaszko and Gary Riley.
Yeah, Casey Siemaszko, you guys know him. He is in Young Guns. You know, he is the pugilist.
Right. He's the pugilist, right?
Yeah,
that's right.
But he's also part of Biff's gang in Back to the Future. I think he made it all the way to the Future gang as well, and I think the Wild West gang as well. He was also in 3 O'Clock High. That's one of his famous roles. That's a quietly famous film from the 1980s about a kid having to remember that about a kid having to like fight. I put that one in with My Bodyguard, 3 O'Clock High, and My Bodyguard.
Absolutely.
With those kind of off-kilter high school movies and what have you. But he
will
was
these
born
be
in,
part of your? I'm sorry. Will these be part of your 80s movie podcast?
100%. Are you kidding? I spent the other night 30 minutes. I spent watching scenes from My Bodyguard because I haven't watched it in forever, and I went down to some random. And YouTube sometimes knows me. It suggested a scene. I was like, oh fuck, I haven't watched that scene in decades. And I watched it. Next thing you know, I'm watching the scenes from the movie. I was like, mother effer, you know. So yeah, it's the way it goes. But Casey's dad is Konstanty Siemaszko. He was a Polish Roman Catholic and former member of the Polish Navy. He joined the Polish underground and was a survivor of the Sachsenhausen concentration camp, then emigrated to Chicago in 1959. And of course, Casey and his sister Nina, who's also an actress, she had some, shall we say, interesting softcore porn films from the 1980s when they did those things. She was a part of that. But yeah, he's been an actor for quite some time, certainly a part of Law and Order, Biloxi. He was also in Biloxi Blues. Remember him in that movie as well, of Mice and Men, Milk Money, The Phantom, and Public Enemies in 2009 at the Ridley Scott film. But a lot of TV all the way up until 2016 in Billions. So he's been a consistently working actor both on TV and film.
So we come in sort of in the middle of a conversation where they're arguing about something. We hear something about finding him, and then we hear...
We saw him. So? It ain't nothing to us. The kid's dead, so it ain't nothing to him neither. And who gives a shit if they ever find him? I don't.
So now we realize this is something serious that they're talking about, and then we hear in the voiceover...
We had all followed the Ray Brower story very closely because he was a kid our age. 3 days before, he had gone out to pick blueberries, and nobody'd seen him since.
And he is spying on his brothers, and we're watching them like through this sort of diamond-shaped slat, hearing this story, and they're arguing about whether or not they should go tell the cops. The problem is they had just stolen a car, and it's hard to go tell the cops, hey, we're on a joyride in the car we stole, but we saw a body.
And Gary Riley is the other guy. He's the one that wants to tell the cops. He's kind of the dumber of the two in the situation. And for those of you who remember Gary Riley, he's the guy in Summer School who plays like the weirdo obsessed with horror effects and blood and gore. He's one of the twosome, the blonde
That's also
guy.
on your 80s movies list, I hope.
100%. Are you kidding? Kirstie Alley and Mark Harmon for sure.
Love
but
that
also,
movie.
But remember, he's also the guy that steals Steve Martin and John Candy's wallets in Planes, Trains, and Automobiles. He's in Ruthless People. He's been in Growing Pains. He's in Amazing Story with the Spielberg show that he did for a while there. And he auditioned to be the role for both roles, Bill and Ted, from Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure, but did get neither of them of those roles as well. So yeah, I mean, he did a lot of stuff as an actor at a young age, but a lot of fun to see him in this movie as well.
I wish Ace had been with us. Could have told the cops he was in his car.
Well, he wasn't.
We're gonna tell him?
We're not gonna tell nobody. Nobody never. You dig me?
And now we're back at the treehouse.
I bet you anything that if we find him, we'll get our pictures in the paper. Yeah, we can even be on TV. Sure, we'll be heroes. Yeah.
So this is a fantasy. And I like, too, that it's like, wait, we're going to lie to our parents about where we're going to sleep, walk 20 miles, discover a body, and get our pictures in the paper. This is a plan that's got a lot of problems with it.
This is the kind of stupid shit you believe when you're a
exactly.
kid. You know, it's great. Yeah.
I remember once, so I lived in Tiburon, California, which there's an arm of the San Francisco Bay that's called Richardson Bay, which is right below my house. and across the bay is Sausalito, which is where which is where we go to see the George and Gracie in Star Trek 4.
Right.
So the tide goes in and the tide goes out. And one day, me and my friends, probably right about this age, went, let's build a raft. And so we start gathering like scrap wood, and we're like putting it together, and like we got some rope and we're putting it together, and we're in, the tide is out. And so we're just like carrying it out in mud, and we finally get to the water. I mean, it was like, we just were, it was the stupidest thing. And had we been even the tiniest bit successful, which we absolutely weren't, we probably could have drowned. Like it's a good thing we failed as completely as we did.
Oh man.
I don't know. Billy will know where I found out. He's not gonna care. Because it's gonna be us guys that find him, not Billy and Charlie Hogan in the boosted car. He'll probably pin a medal on you, Vern.
And this persuades them.
Yeah.
And this is what we're going to see a lot. Because I actually think you're right. Vern is right about a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
Gordy is the thinker. It's like Gordy has the intelligence and Chris has the wisdom, is how I would put it. He says,
and Teddy has the guts, the bravery of the crazy.
The bravery, the anger.
Right?
Yeah.
We'll all tell our folks we're tenting out in your backfield. You tell your folks you're sleeping over at Teddy's. Then we say we're going over to the drag races the next day. We're rock solid till dinner tomorrow night.
Man, that's a plan and a half.
and then this is really telling.
But if we do find that kid's body over in South Harlow, they'll know we didn't go to the drag races. We'll get hided.
Nobody will care. Because everybody's going to be so jazzed about what we found, it's not going to make a difference.
Yeah.
And then Chris has the key line.
Well, my dad'll hide me anyway, but hell, it's worth the hiding.
Shit, yeah.
Let's do it.
My dad'll hide me anyway. Tells us a lot about what his life is, you know.
Yeah. You know, I don't know how prevalent it is nowadays, but certainly, Steve, I think you and I growing up, we knew kids who suffered physical abuse at the hands of their fathers. Constantly. It wasn't something that was looked down upon by society for the most part, right? And it was something that was very much happening. And yes, I got spanked by my dad, but it was never like abusive. He didn't do it all the time or anything. It was when big things happened to try to teach me a lesson, right? But like, you know, we knew kids that would get beat all the time for no reason at all. You know, sometimes drunk, sometimes not, just anger. You know, and so the fact that he's so matter of fact about it is how kids are. They just learn to live with their situations.
And then we see the kids they're giving noogies and playing and wrestling, and Gordy is kind of sitting back.
I wanted to share my friend's enthusiasm, but I couldn't. That summer at home, I had become the invisible boy.
And then we cut to, and man, this is so painful. We see Mom is pulling in the wash. And Mom, by the way, is played by Frances Lee McCain.
Yeah, and Frances Lee McCain, you guys remember her. She was in Gremlins. She played the character of Lynn Peltzer. She's the mother of Billy, the main guy in Gremlins. She was also the mother of Kevin Bacon's character in Footloose, for those of you Eagle Eye. And she was even in Back to the Future playing Leah Thompson's mom in the past sequences as Stella Baines as well. So yeah, a lot of stuff. She's from... she relocated, to the San Francisco Bay Area in the late 1980s and also appeared in Scream as the mother of Rose McGowan and David Arquette's characters, and in Patch Adams as well. So a very good character actress. She's an associate artist of the Z Space Studio in San Francisco and an ensemble member of the Alter Theater Ensemble in San Rafael.
Oh.
Yeah.
I've been to Z Space.
Okay.
San Rafael is 7 miles from where I grew up.
Oh, wow.
So no, I bet I've seen her.
There you go.
And then we see in the background Gordy at the window calling to his mom.
Mom, you know where my canteen is?
And Mom doesn't answer. It's really painful to watch. This very much reflects Rob's relationship with his parents. I think that a lot of the power of this film comes from Rob Reiner's feelings, but it also comes from the actor's feelings. So Wil Wheaton never wanted to act.
Oh, wow.
It wasn't a choice that he wanted. He got dragged to an audition by his mom for like a mother-son thing because she wanted to act. She told him, tell the agent, I want to do what mommy does. And he started to have panic attacks like his parents because he didn't feel like his parents were listening to him.
Damn.
So when Rob is developing this part and they're doing those improvs and doing those rehearsals, they're talking about this. Wil Wheaton's never heard the term sense memory. He doesn't know what it is.
Right.
But that's what Rob is working with him on. Then we see Dad, who's played by Marshall Bell, who I remember the last time we saw him, I think, was in Total Recall.
Yeah, Total Recall.
Yeah.
Watto and George. Yeah. Yeah, but he's been in a number of things as well. He was in Nightmare on Elm Street 2, Freddy's Revenge, Starship Troopers. He was part of that as well, and done a number of things here through the years. He was in Digstown. I think it's one of the closet favorite 90s films, Digstown as well.
That'll be the sequel.
Killers.
That'll be the sequel to your 80s movie podcast when you move on to the 90s movie podcast.
Maybe. Yeah, he was in Payback, Truth and Consequences, New Mexico. Quite a lot of films all the way through. Rescue Dawn, which a lot of people liked as well. So consistent working actor. But he is married since 1980 to Milana Canonero, who is an Italian costume designer who has received numerous accolades and 4 Academy Awards and 3 BAFTAs and 2 Costume Designer Guild Awards for her work as a costume designer. She has frequently collaborated with Stanley Kubrick, Francis Ford Coppola, and Wes Anderson. She received 9 nominations for Best Costume Design for the Academy Awards. She won for Barry Lyndon, Chariots of Fire, Marie Antoinette, and the Grand Budapest Hotel. So that's a very talented couple they got there.
Yeah, seriously.
Yeah.
And he says, and I'm curious what you think about this, because I think what he's going to say is that the canteen is in Denny's room. I think Mom heard him call and ask for the canteen, knew it was in Denny's room, and couldn't bring herself to say it.
Yep. I agree with that 100%. And can't bring herself to go into that room.
In April, my older brother Dennis had been killed in a Jeep accident. 4 months had passed, but my parents still hadn't been able to put the pieces back together again.
And we see then Gordy go into his brother's room. And there, right away, we see a photo of his brother, who's John Cusack. And I forget every single time I've watched this movie, I think, is that I don't remember that it's John Cusack coming in.
Yeah. And this is 86, right? Right before Cusack becomes Cusack. So you're able to use him in a film like this. And I also think, again, this speaks to the kind of like love people have for Rob Reiner.
Yeah.
That an actor like Cusack would come in for just a couple of flashback sequences, but he does a great job and he brings the right kind of warmth to this character and affection for his brother that comes through in these flashbacks.
Well, I mean, we're right after The Sure Thing. So he just spent a movie with Cusack. And I think, this is the sign, man, is that of course you come back to do this because it was great working with Rob Reiner,
Exactly.
Yep. And what's so funny, I think this role for John Cusack is the thing he puts less spin on and less Cusackness. And it's just fully 100% solidly, positively who he is.
Hey, Gordy, I got something for you. This, my friend, is for you.
Hey, this is your Yankee cap.
No, this is your Yankee cap. It's a good luck cap. You wear that cap, you know how many fish we're gonna catch?
How much?
Brazilian fish. And it looks good on you, too, just like that.
I would almost never write this scene because it's so devoid of conflict. It's so sweet and lovely, and it's so perfect in this moment. It does, it is right. It would, in any other hands, I think it would be really corny, and I don't find it that way at all.
No, I agree.
And then they start joking together, and we're laughing, and then Dad's voice comes in and interrupts the flashback.
You found it.
Huh?
You found it.
Yeah.
And then, fucking Dad, man. This is just the worst what's about to happen. Because Gordy's walking out and he's just been in his dead brother's room. That's the first thing. Like, that's heavy shit regardless. And he's walking out and Dad says,
Why can't you have friends like Denny's?
Yeah, and it's, again, like this site, we've seen these characters and we know these dads sometimes who like, at least from our time growing up. I don't know how it is with dads nowadays, but certainly when we were growing up, there were those dads who like, it was so obvious that one child was the preferred child. One child was the favorite. One child had all these things that child could accomplish, and you put all your hopes on him or her. And so that's clearly the energy here. Mom won't talk to him, and Dad is mad that it's kind of quietly mad that it wasn't him who died instead of his favorite son. This is a horror in a very real, visceral way for a child to experience the rejection of their parents because they're not the other brother, which is utterly painful.
I love that you brought up this horror thing from the beginning because I think we're going to keep returning back to it because I've never experienced vampires or demons or, soul-sucking whatever that I have to. But I've experienced not this particular one, but emotions like this and immediately on a gut level feel so strongly for Gordy. And the reality is every single human on this planet has felt their version of this, not this necessarily, but felt rejected and unloved and lost and unsure and all those things. I can relate so much. And I mean, he says,
Dad, they're okay.
Sure they are. A thief and 2 Phoebes.
It's so funny. The short we were talking about, the short we mentioned before, one of the things we were talking about was how easy it is, particularly in social media, to reduce someone to a stereotype or to take one trait and say that's everything we need to know about them. And this whole movie is proving it's not that there aren't flaws in Teddy and Vern and even Chris and Gordy, but you can't reduce them to a thief and 2 Phoebes.
Chris isn't a thief.
He stole the milk money at school. He's a thief in my book.
And he walks away.
Yeah. But it's a nice plant, right? Because that milk money is going to be what breaks Chris down later on in the film. That whole sequence when they're by the tree and Chris opens up to him. So it's like these little plants, they're letting us know about these things ahead of time before they blow up.
It was almost noon as we set out to find the body of a dead kid named Ray Brower.
And as he's walking along, a pickup truck pulls by and Chris jumps out and says, and this is not important dialogue, he thanks the driver and the driver says, sure thing. Do you know why the driver says sure thing?
Was that a reference to Rob Reiner's film?
Yep. Every movie he likes to throw these little references back and forth, and that is the one for this one.
Yeah, when we talked about A Few Good Men, I pointed out how they had a copy of Tom Cruise had a copy of Misery on his desk. I was thinking, yeah, you're right.
Yep, there's all sorts of little things like that. It's not quite Alfred Hitchcock showing up in a cameo, but it's kind of like that kind of thing.
Right.
And Chris says, "You want to see something?" And he pulls him aside, reaches into his, bedroll, and pulls out a 45.
What a shocking moment watching this again, because I'd forgotten that moment. Like now, if I saw that in a movie, I'd be like, whoa. But I guess back then, we were a little more like open to this kind of stuff that's unsettling,
I mean, honestly, so I tried to show this movie to Jackson, because I was curious about what he thought, and because of your and my timing and scheduling, and him multiple times refusing to watch the movie, which happens all the time with my son. We never did it, and I was thinking about it. I'm like, I think this movie would be totally alien to him. I mean, he's 14 and a half, so he's 2.5 years older than these guys,
right?
And he's never done anything on his own away from adults.
Right.
Much less go on a 2-day long journey into the woods,
Much less handle a firearm, I would imagine.
Well, that's the thing is like these guys they have a gun. And I was having just done, because Jackson's interested in guns, we'd done some gun training and went to a shooting range. And we were very, very focused on all the safety rules and how serious you should take having a gun. And that is not what we're about to see here.
No, not at all.
Where'd you get this?
Popped it from my old man's bureau. It's 45.
I can see that.
I do like Gordy's face, Wil Wheaton's face, when he's like, yeah, I know it's a 45. That's that young male kid thing, right? Where you're like, of course I know. Don't tell me what it is. I know what it is. And I like that because it's got this little kind of, that there's this little, how can I say this? This little reactionary guy inside of Gordy, right? He's got a little bit of rage himself. And that may be why he connects to Chris in the way he does, because Chris has that rage all the time, so.
Well, I also think it's, Chris is physical. Chris is tough. Chris has dealt with a lot of stuff. Gordy is the intellectual of the group. He is the nerd.
Right.
And so I agree with you. I think he's marking out some territory.
You got shells for it?
Yeah. I took all that was left in the box. My dad'll think that he used them himself shooting at beer cans while he was drunk.
Is it loaded?
Hell no. What do you think I am?
Jesus!
Yeah, Gordy shoots it. Yeah, and the bullet goes in there.
They take off. a waitress comes out who, because they were like in the alley outside of a diner, who says, "Who did that? Who's letting cherry bombs out here?" And this is Madeline Swift, who I understand was Rob's assistant on this film.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. And here's what's really interesting. The first thing that happens after they get away is that Chris is kind of making fun of Gordy as if this was a joke.
You knew it was loaded, you wet end! I'm gonna be in trouble now that Tupper babe saw me.
Shit, Gordy, she thought it was firecrackers.
I don't care, that was a mean trick, Chris.
Hey, Gordy.
And this is, I think, one of the first moments where you really start to see how special a person Chris Chambers is.
Yeah.
Because he goes, "Hey, Gordy, I did," because he goes in a very sincere and serious way, totally reversing the jokiness that he had a second ago.
I didn't know it was loaded. Honest.
You swear?
Yeah, I swear.
On your mother's name?
Yeah.
Even if she goes to hell because you lied?
Yeah, I swear.
Pinky swear?
Do you think this is true, by the way, that he didn't know it was loaded?
Yeah, I think he didn't know it was loaded.
I mean, do too.
Yeah, because if he did know it was loaded and he went through this whole rigmarole of the pinky swear, then it would make him a less honorable character to lie to his friend, his best friend, like this, you know?
First of all, you do not violate the sanctity of a pinky swear. I mean, that is a big deal.
Yeah.
I also go like, hey, hey, all you kids out there listening who find your father's gun, assume it's loaded.
Yeah, always assume it's loaded.
Yeah. It's one of the basic rules. And just as they're having this pinky swear moment, out pops Kiefer Sutherland as Ace, our bad guy, who was, one of our bad guys in A Few Good Men too.
Hey, girls, where you going?
Hey, come on, man, my brother gave me that.
And he grabs the hat, which we know is the hat that his dead brother gave him to Gordy. Yeah. And he starts to fight back. Ace makes him jump for it. And then Chris, who, to be clear, is the toughest guy in our group, but is many years younger than Kiefer Sutherland and Eyeball, who's the other guy that's with us. He says,
"You real asshole, you know that?"
Chris is fearless. Or not fearless, but able to overcome fear.
Well, I think he's willing to confront a situation and like do the right thing.
Yeah.
That's the thing about Chris. He does the right thing, which is what, of course, leads to his death, trying to stop a fight in a diner. Gets knifed in the throat for it. But this is something that's inherent in him. Defending his friend against these two guys, and one of them is his brother, is, the right thing to do in that moment. And so he'll take the hit and he'll take the pounding, which is about to take from Kiefer Sutherland's character to prove the point.
Such a great point, because that's what we're going to see through the whole movie is that Chris cares about what's right.
Yeah.
That's what he really cares about. And it's going to work against him right now because his brother says,
"Now, Christopher, I know you didn't mean to insult my friend."
I know he didn't mean to insult me. That's why I'm going to give him the opportunity of taking it back.
And he pushes Chris on the ground.
Oh, shit.
Take it back.
Oh, come on, man, stop it. You're hurting him. Bastard, let go, man. Stop it, man.
Take it back,
cut it out.
kid.
Oh.
And then he grabs that lit cigarette and brings it down towards Chris's face, threatening to burn him.
I think Chris would have held out longer if the cigarette hadn't gotten involved. Like, he's got that kind of like stubborn determination to fight.
I think you're right, because he'd have taken a punch or three. Yeah.
If his dad hits him, how much harder is Kiefer Sutherland going to hit him? Please.
Okay, I take it back.
And Ace tosses the cigarette and lets him up.
Yeah.
And this is an interesting question we got from one of our patrons. As we've mentioned many times, if you're at the $10 and above tier, you can ask questions on any of our upcoming movies. And this comes from patron Jennifer Lewis, who says she has an observation that she doesn't think she could have made until she had a high-quality 4K TV. And she says, did you notice the scar on Eyeball's left side next to his eye? It makes you think maybe Ace put a cigarette out on Eyeball's face like he tried to do with Chris. Could this mean that Eyeball didn't check it out and Chris did? If Chris did let him put the cigarette out on him, would he have a different trajectory in his life, more like his brother?
I think that's a great observation and question. I don't think Chris's brother didn't give in until the cigarette. I think Kiefer Sutherland's kind of asshole in the movie who would immediately burn his face because of something the guy, Chris's brother, said to him, to teach him to be in line, to teach him to follow him, you know, because throughout the whole movie, he bullies everybody in his gang and even almost risks the death of Shamasco and the other kid in the car when they're doing the chicken game with the guy. So I think he cares about nobody's life and he just wants to, you know, rule other people. So I think he burned Chris's brother's face because his Chris's brothers like contradicted him or made some joke at his expense. And he just did it right off the bat to fuck with him.
So first of all, there's no question that Ace uses dominance and violence and abuse to keep his people in line. I'll tell you the thought that I had, and it relates to why Chris does give in when that cigarette is so close to his face.
Yeah.
Because the other person we're not talking about is Chris and Eyeball's dad.
Yeah.
Who we know is abusive. And I wonder if there is a cigarette burn on Eyeball, if it actually is his dad that did it.
Yeah.
And Chris, having seen what that does, that is actually why he gives up where he wouldn't have given up, as we said, to getting punched or kicked or whatever.
Right. But I also think to take the last part of her, and that's a great point, Steve. I think you're right. It was the dad who did it, probably. But I think the second part of her question, I don't think Chris's trajectory would have changed because Chris is a good person.
Yeah.
Some people are born good. Some people are born with a proclivity for, in my opinion, for a proclivity for violence or crime. It doesn't mean they can't change that point of view later in life or rehabilitate, but I think some people are born with it. It doesn't mean across the board this is a generality. I just think sometimes some people are born with goodness and some people are born with an instinct for bullying or evil. It's just what I think.
I mean, as a parent of a child, even going beyond good and evil, I can say with absolute certainty that we come hardwired for some stuff.
Yes, right?
You know, you might be hardwired to like string beans. You might be hardwired to enjoy sports. You might all sorts of things. And our experiences in life will change and evolve that. But you actually, there's hardware and there's software, and you cannot fully rewrite the hardware. You know? That's what you came with.
Yep. Agree.
And I agree. I think Ace was born to be an asshole, you know, and he's perfectly satisfied now that he's dominated Chris. By the way, so apparently, you know, we have this peer group of these kids all close to the same age, between 11 and, you know, I think River's like 14 or 15 at this point. Yeah. Well, the other peer group was the older guys, and apparently Kiefer Sutherland and John Cusack did some serious partying in Oregon while they were shooting this movie because they didn't have to be on set that much.
Yeah.
So they were just having a good time.
Which, as you do at that age.
Yeah. Amazing shot of them walking on these train tracks. And they're talking about the gun and why they would bring it. And, you know, maybe they need it for defense, or we might see a bear. And then I love Vern just chiming in with,
I brought a comb.
What do we need a comb for?
Well, if we get on TV, we want to look good, don't we?
It's a lot of thinking, Vern. Thanks.
I like that each of those two brought two different things. Chris brings a gun. Vern brings a comb. Right? And they're both to handle two different things. For Chris, it's about protection. For Vern, it's about looking good. Because that's what Vern is concerned about. Whereas Chris is concerned about danger at every corner because that's what he's grown up with. Vern is more concerned about how he's going to look because he's lived a more comfortable existence. And so it's just a different point of view, you know.
I mean, I think another thing we come hardwired with to some degree is how easily we can figure out the world and, you know, basic intelligence. I think Chris has been pretty capable of dealing with the world. He has had to deal with the world from a very young age. Vern has struggled mightily with the world. And I am certain that his mom's repeatedly said, comb your hair. Your hair is such a mess. Here, did you remember to bring your comb? And so Vern in his brain is just like, got to remember the comb. Like, that's important.
Yeah.
You know?
How far do you think it's going to be? If we follow the tracks all the way into Harlow, it'll be about 20 miles. Sound about right to you, Gordy?
Yeah, it might even be 30.
I mean, they're talking about a 2-day walking journey to get to this place. I mean, this is a substantial journey.
Gee, maybe we should just hitchhike.
There's no way that sucks.
Why not? We could go out to Route 7 to the Charlotte Church, then down the back Carlo Road. We'll be there by sundown.
That's pussy.
Hey, it's a long ways.
Did your mother ever have any kids that lived?
The picking on Vern, what's so funny as a kid who was picked on is I could simultaneously go, oh, stop being so mean to this poor kid, and totally laugh at Vern. You know?
Yeah, because it never feels malicious, but it certainly feels at times like a lot. You know? But I also think, again, I think Vern just comes from a more comfortable house and a little less drama. And so the other kids are picking on him almost as from a place of jealousy, almost. You know, I'm not trying to discount picking on people, because certainly I was picked on until I was 15 years old, and I fucking hated it, and I still carry a chip about it. But I think that they're all coming from bad households, and Vern's only issue is they lost his jar of pennies.
His brother's kind of a jerk, but no, I'm with you. He is the sheltered kid, you know, who hasn't been through this trauma. It's later. We're walking and singing the theme song from the TV show Have Gun Will Travel.
Have gun will travel reads the card of a man. A knight without armor in a savage land. His fast gun for hire heaps the calling wind. A soldier of fortune is a man called Paladin.
Yeah. Which is a good theme song. And again, I keep thinking about my kid in this world without screens. In a world without screens, they're walking for hours after hours, and they have to come up with ways to it. I am sure that you've been on car rides or long walks or trips where you started singing TV theme songs.
Oh, yeah, 100%. I have a whole mix on my iPhone of my favorite TV songs. Sometimes if I'm in kind of a bad mood or whatever, I will put those on because they just bring me joy. So yes, 100%.
Now, is this mix more filled with orchestral themes like Mission Impossible or Hawaii Five-0, or do we have a lot of lyrics in here? Like this is the story of a man named Brady? I mean, what do we got here?
There's no Brady Bunch, but there is absolutely that's there is Mission Impossible. There's absolutely Hawaii Five-0 and the theme from SWAT.
Oh, yeah, good ones.
Those are the three like no lyric, badass theme songs. And I don't mean like the Mission Impossible. I mean from the old school.
Of course.
And then a lot of 1980s theme songs from those TV shows with lyrics like Give Me a Break, Perfect Strangers, Family Ties. So many of those are on there. Sanford and Son, The Jeffersons. Jeffersons is number one. Nothing can beat The Jeffersons. That fucking song.
I mean, you're moving on up, man.
I mean, that is the song. Like the second it comes on, I'm jumping out my chair.
All right.
It's amazing.
Upcoming Cine-Files shorts, TV theme songs.
100%.
No question about it.
No question.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
By the way, just quick digression. I'm so glad you mentioned the names that you mentioned. One of my favorite moments in the history of the Cine-Files is when we had Mike Vogel and Shannon McClung, and we were doing Back to the Future, and you guys all burst into the lyrics of those theme songs, including Family Ties and Perfect Strangers, and it was awesome.
No, Perfect Strangers is the best theme.
That's the best theme song from the 80s, period.
Gentlemen.
Yeah.
Standing tall on the wings of my dreams, rise and fall on the wings of my dreams. And then best part, through rain and thunder, wind and haze, I'm bound for better days.
Moving on, now we're talking about that we're gonna stop at some junkyard up ahead, and what that's going to mean. And there's this dog there named Chopper, who we'll hear more about in a moment. And then we hear,
Hey, I'm kind of hungry. Who's got the food?
Oh, shit. Did anybody bring anything?
Not me. 40?
Oh, this is great. What are we supposed to do? Eat our feet?
Nobody brought food, John.
Of course. Nobody thought about it. Everyone was thinking someone else was going to do it.
Well, and what's crazy to me is at this moment, let's say they've walked 2 hours.
Yeah.
You turn around and go home, but they don't turn around and go home. This is like kids today, I firmly believe, I mean, they would never have gone on this journey. And they definitely wouldn't have gone, well, we're self-reliant enough to figure out what food to get and how to get it and where that's what they're going to do.
Yeah.
I love as they're arguing about whose fault it is and whose idea this is. They say, well, this wasn't my idea. It was Vern's idea. Why didn't you bring something? What am I supposed to do? Think of everything? I brought the comb. I mean, he did.
I love that. I brought the comb.
So they pool their money, everybody having, a few pennies under $1, except Vern, who has 7 cents.
Again.
I haven't found my pennies yet.
Yeah, I found my pennies. That's so great.
And now it's a little later. They're walking on the train tracks, and there's a train coming. So naturally, when you're walking on train tracks, you get off the tracks.
Yeah.
Except Teddy. Yeah. And he stands there and goes, I'm going to dodge it. So I want to say 2 things simultaneously about this sequence. One is, I don't feel in terms of action and visuals that it pulls off the thing that it's trying to pull off, which is the idea, because in the way that this is set up, which is that Teddy is standing there in front of the train and the train is getting so close that finally Chris has to jump up and pull him off.
Yeah.
But I never felt like Teddy was particularly in real danger, and I don't know how you felt. So it's like, emotionally, I think the scene totally works. I think action-wise, the scene doesn't quite pull off what I think it's trying to.
Right, I agree with you. I think the Vern Gordy scene is much more terrifying, right?
Absolutely.
And this scene, this is more a matter of like showing you that Teddy's crazy.
Get the hell off the tracks, Teddy! You want to get yourself killed?
Just like the beach in Normandy.
And what they're doing is the technique that they're going to use later on the trestle, which is we have a super long lens, so that train is actually much farther away than it looks like it is. So Teddy's never particularly close, which I think it looks that way. And Chris runs up and grabs him and pulls him off. Right. And Teddy freaks out.
I'm just trying to save your life, man. You want to kill yourself? Is that what you want, goddammit? You're trying to kill yourself.
Do you think Teddy was seriously considering killing himself in this moment? What do you think was going on?
I think he was going to go as close as possible, and he wanted to test himself. And I think this is the thing that is messed up by his father burning his ear. It has essentially created a new level of pain tolerance for Teddy. So Teddy is self-destructive, I think, because of the upbringing and all of that. But also he wants to test how far he can go. He wants to test his manhood in a way. And so these are these moments. It's no different than people challenge you to jump off that bridge into the water. It's 30 feet down. It's essentially that. But Teddy has his own way of doing it. And Chris saving him pisses him off for a couple of reasons. One, the fact that he has to be saved, which undercuts his burgeoning masculinity for a young male. And the second thing is that Teddy didn't do it himself. Someone Teddy wanted to see if he could do it. And you took away my agency of being able to do that by jumping in that train and taking me out. So,
I think so. I think, it's like there's a difference between being suicidal and having suicidal ideation, thinking about it. Right. I don't think this is a suicidal moment at all. Right. I think this is him contemplating the thing and going, well, what would that be like? And what would that feel like? And I also think, and this is where I think this is actually, I don't know how long you leave Teddy on those tracks. If you're not sure, you got to drag him off. But I think this is kind of the one false move from Chris to some degree, or it works out poorly, because I think part of what Teddy's doing is going, I'm going to show how tough I am, how brave I am. Yeah. I'm going to do, just like you said, jumping off the bridge or whatever. I'm going to show that I'm the cool guy by doing that. Yeah. But what he's actually exposing that he doesn't want to expose is I'm the crazy, possibly suicidal, self-harm guy.
Yeah.
That's what the other guys see. They don't see the coolness that Teddy wants them to see.
I don't need no babysitter.
I do too.
And then Chris does, and this is like we've had a conflict. We are now going to resolve that conflict. Yeah. He holds out his hand and says,
skin it.
And Teddy won't do it.
I could have dodged it.
Listen, Teddy, you can dodge it on the way back, man. Please. Skin it.
Again, because Chris is trying to control the situation and trying to control Teddy being okay with it, right? And this is something Chris would have, I think he eventually learns, right? Because that's the thing. Just because you want to resolve a conflict doesn't mean the other person wants to resolve it at the same time. You've got Chris them to calm down and then want to resolve it. Chris is trying to force both things. Like he forced himself to save Teddy because he's got this white knight thing in his head. And then he tried to force Teddy to resolve it. And Teddy, to his credit, I think it's great that Teddy walks off because Teddy's his own person.
Right. It's so funny. There's so many things I relate to Chris about. Many things, obviously, I don't relate to Chris about.
Yeah.
But the stepping in between people and being like trying to resolve conflicts when people do not want their conflicts resolved. I've been there many, many times.
So, and then there's just one thing, if you want to pay attention to the technical mistakes in filmmaking that drive editors crazy as the gang runs away, you can see Vern's radio mic fall out of his pants leg and dangle on the ground as they're running away. And I can picture the editor going, I want to cut this out, but that was the best take. Do I leave in something that people are always going to notice and comment on, but that's the best take, and that is what they decided to do?
But I wonder how many of them really thought that in the 1980s, right, Steve? They didn't know we were going to do 4K. They didn't know we were going to get like HD real deep into this stuff. So maybe they did notice it, but it was like, you make that mistake in the term paper, and you're like, whatever. The rest of the paper is good. If they're focusing on that, we've done the wrong job. So I don't know.
Well, I'm certain that having done a Star Trek podcast, that nobody in the mid-'60s thought that people would be going frame by frame over these things 50 years later. So I do think that's true. But I also think, having been in the editing room, of course they saw it. Of course they looked at it. That's not the thing that they missed. And of course they had the conversation. I mean, it's kind of what you do all the time, because you're going like, okay, in this take, River Phoenix is amazing, but Vern looks away and is kind of eyeballs the camera almost for a moment.
Yeah.
What do we do? And then you make a value call on those things, and it happens all the time.
Couldn't they have cut it to frame it to where you wouldn't see his mic fall out while he's running away? Wouldn't you have been able, with the technology back then, to just move closer?
You absolutely could.
Yeah.
And I'm not looking at the shot right now, but it's like, if you go through the whole shot, it's okay. You can't do it mid-shot.
Yeah.
Because if you do it mid-shot, it'd be noticeable. So then you go like, well, will it work for the whole shot? And I don't remember what the movement of the shot is. What would that frame in? What would that frame? I mean, it's literally that. But what you're describing is, this is what happens in the editing room, because someone will make that suggestion. Well, can we reframe it? And then maybe and what's interesting too, it's funny, I didn't think this was going to be a thing we talk a lot about, but like, today on my computer, I can reframe it right now.
Yes.
And we can look at it and go, well, that either works or it doesn't work.
Right.
Back then, if they wanted to reframe it, what they had to do was they had to make an optical. So they'd send out the film to have it reframed, create a new piece of, because they're cutting on film, bring the film back and now cut it in, which means you've got like a 3 or 4 day turnaround.
Wow.
In order to find out if that thing's going to work,
And they had dailies, so they must have noticed it in the dailies, I imagine, as well. So,
maybe that's you might not notice it in the dailies because you're watching. Yeah, maybe someone did and maybe they didn't. I don't know, but like you're watching a whole bunch of footage. Everyone's exhausted. You're just like, oh, is the scene good? But once you get in the editing room and you're going over it slowly, you 100% notice it.
There's so many examples of this stuff, boom mics and stuff like that. It's really phenomenal to see that. Yeah.
Well, one of the things, again, this is becoming a longer thing that happens with like the boom mic is, so it used to be that movies were 4:3, right? So all movies were what old school TVs were. And then they went into having widescreen and different kinds of widescreen. And then they went into shooting a movie widescreen, but knowing it was going to be on TV. So what would happen is, when you look through your film camera, they put in all these little lines, all these little squares to say, here's where a TV frame would be. Here's where this frame would be. So when they're filming it, the DP is thinking about, this has to work for a square frame. This has to work for our widescreen. It has to be title safe, because there's a thing, TVs stretch, it's turning into a whole thing, but TVs stretch out video, old school TVs. So that meant that things on the edges on your RCA TV would look perfect, but on your Atlantic TV or your Sony TV, it might expand just far enough that your titles are slightly cut off.
Right.
It's like, this is all these weird things that people are doing, particularly back in the day when they're making movies.
Yeah. Well, there we go. There's a little tangent on that.
We cut to a lovely painted mailbox. It says "Home Sweet Home." It's very pretty. And then out of nowhere, bang, as it gets knocked off. And we go right into Jerry Lee Lewis, Great Balls of Fire. And it's just that impact of hitting the mailbox right into the music that takes us into an entirely different vibe of the film.
You shake my nerves and you rattle my brain.
About this time, Charlie and Billy were playing mailbox baseball with Ace and Eyeball.
Oh, shit, I'm out. God damn it.
And I will tell you, I never understood vandalism. I don't get it. I've been in, you know me. I mean, I'm sure that's not surprising, but like, I remember I was in high school and my friend Jeff, who I had gone freshman, sophomore year of high school, had moved to another place in the Bay Area, was at a different high school, which is how I met Steve Jones, because Steve Jones was a friend of his from that high school.
Right on.
So I went to visit Jeff and I'm hanging out with all his new friends and we're in some park at like 10 o'clock at night and maybe I'm 17 or something.
Yeah.
And all these guys just start breaking shit in the park. They're like knocking things over and kicking, like there's a plaque to memorialize someone that they kicked over. And there was like, and I remember I'd never been in that space before and just being so uncomfortable and just dismayed. And particularly because it's like, well, here's my best friend Jeff and these are his new friends. And this is what, it was weird.
I imagine so. Yeah.
And we're in this car and we're discussing, mailbox baseball and some guys want to go. And then we hear one of, I don't remember which one it is, one of the guys who had found the body, and we hear them start to say, "Hey, Ace, me but then he gets cut off because we're not supposed to talk about this thing." I mean, they have a secret that is burning through them and can't express it.
Some people just want to tell you their shit. They just really do. Even though it's not the smartest thing to do, they just got to get it out. They just got to let it out. And this guy throughout the whole movie until he finally lets it out is like bursting to tell someone. And Shamasco has to keep trying to calm him down and not do it.
And if you gentlemen don't mind, I'd like to finish this game before I start collecting my goddamn Social Security, okay? You're up, Billy.
What's so weird about this, I don't know if any of these guys really like playing mailbox baseball. Ace wants to play it.
They even try to get out of it, right?
Yeah.
Essentially, Ace shames them into continuing and almost threatening them physically to continue it.
I mean, my guess is Ace is among the highest status guys of this age group, and all these other guys get their status by being part of Ace's gang.
Yeah.
And I don't even know if any of them like Ace.
I don't think they do. And I wonder if Ace's dad even does this to the dads of these guys.
Oh,
do you know
probably,
what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's like a,
Yeah. We arrive at a no trespassing sign, and we're at the junkyard that we've heard about.
No trespassing was enforced by Milo Pressman, the junkman, and his dog Chopper, the most feared and least seen dog in Castle Rock. Legend had it that Milo had trained Chopper not just to sick, but to sick specific parts of the human anatomy. Thus, a kid who had illegally scaled the junkyard fence might hear the dread cry, "Chopper, sick balls."
How that's not a t-shirt is beyond me. How that's not a t-shirt.
That leads us perfectly into another question from our, not only one of our patrons, but on our advisory board, Jeff Cook, who asks, and he, by the way, we're going to hear a lot of Jeff's questions as we go along. He has some great questions. Okay. He asks, what other movie has more truly iconic moments that can be referenced with just a word or two? Sick balls, leeches, cherry flavored Pez, mailbox baseball, lard ass, or train. I mean, I'll give you my answer first. Just honestly, I think we can go to many Rob Reiner movies and do the same thing. This goes to 11. Inconceivable.
Yeah.
I'll have what she's having. There's so many lines. Or You Can't Handle the Truth that you can reference from Rob Reiner movies with just a word or two.
Yeah, we just did an episode of Movie Fights that I was on with Eric Goldman and Coy Jandro, and after one of the social media things to tease our fight was that we went around and around with 5 of us quoting Princess Bride quotes. And when you couldn't name any more quotes, you were out of the game. I ended up winning it because we kept going around and around because there's so many quotable things in The Princess Bride. I knocked out all 4 of the other guys because that is one of the most quotable movies ever, one of my favorite movies ever. So yeah, I would say you're absolutely right, Steve. The Rob Reiner films are immensely quotable, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, as we've gone,
Star Trek as well.
Oh, sure. As we with a decade of the Cine-Files now, which we're now really coming up on, it's real close to when we recorded our first episode 10 years ago. We talked a lot about what is the most quotable movie, whether it's Holy Grail or Big Lebowski or all these. We've never asked the question, who is the most quotable director? Who has directed the most quotable movies? And I think Rob Reiner, there's a real argument there.
I agree.
Teddy's crazy.
Where's the beer? Come on, man, move it out. Yeah, he won't live to be 20, I bet.
Remember the time you saved him in the tree?
Which is more detail in the book, by the way.
I dream about that sometimes. Except in the dream, I always miss him. I just get a couple of his hairs and down he goes.
So what the story is in the tree is that Teddy was doing something reckless, fell, and Chris caught him and carried him down with Teddy yelling at Chris the whole time. And I just go, man, that is some serious hero complex to be laid on this kid at this age.
Yeah, well, now it makes sense when you hear him tell the dream that he keeps missing Terry. Yeah. That makes sense why he went and grabbed Terry way earlier than the train was getting there, because he doesn't want to miss Teddy again in real life, even though he misses him in his dream when he tries to catch him. So, yeah, I think that could be part of it, of the reason why he does what he does there by the train.
Well, I honestly go, I mean, Chris is saving everybody else. Chris really needs someone to save him.
Yeah.
But you didn't miss him. Chris Chambers never misses, does he?
Not even when the ladies leave the seat down.
There's some dumb jokes that I love. They're like perfect 12-year-old jokes,
100%.
And then Chris says, I'll race you. And Chris and Gordy race, with Chris yelling at Gordy along the way, running backwards, making no effort, because there's absolutely no way that Gordy LaChance can outrun Chris Chambers.
Even with a head start, which he gets here,
Yeah. On the other hand, Wil Wheaton could outrun River Phoenix.
Oh.
River Phoenix, that's what I hear. River Phoenix apparently is not that fast. And so at first, Wil beats him. And then Rob's like, look, you can't let him beat you. So now Wil's running slower, but now he looks like he's running slower.
Yeah.
And this is one of those great acting lessons. And I love what Rob told him is he's like, okay, because Wil goes up to Rob and goes, how do I make it look like I'm trying to run as fast as I can, but not run as fast as I can?
Right.
And Rob says, here's what you do. First of all, take much shorter steps. So take steps that are a third shorter, and then really, really pump your arms as hard as you possibly can. Put your effort into pumping your arms really hard so your effort shows on your face. I'm saying more than Rob said, or more than I know that he said, but I totally understand. This is the point, is that you put, as an actor, you go like, well, put your effort in your arms. And that way that effort shows on your face. The shorter step means it's much harder to run fast. And so you look like you're busting your ass and not getting anywhere.
Yeah, that makes sense.
This is, to me, this is like the director's job is, like the actor comes to you with a thing and goes, I'm struggling with this. And it's like, my job is to figure out how to help this particular actor, because it's not always going to be the same with different actors to accomplish the thing they're struggling to accomplish. And now they're sitting in the shade in the junkyard. Pretty much, I don't usually hang out in no trespassing places with dogs that can sick balls, but that's what they're doing. And this is great. 12-year-old, late 50s conversation.
I think Annette's tits are getting bigger.
Think so?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, I think he's right. I've been noticing lately that the A and the E are starting to bend around the sides.
That's a great joke.
For those of you too young to know this, they're referencing Annette Funicello from the Mickey Mouse Club from back in the 50s.
And if we were, and I'm sure, if you and I were back in the 50s, you and I would be watching Annette Funicello in the Mickey Mouse Club.
100%. If my parents would let me watch it, yeah.
And they're all kind of spitting and playing like boys, and we hear,
this is really a good time. The most.
A blast.
Vern didn't just mean being off limits inside the junkyard, or fudging on our folks, or going on a hike up the railroad tracks to Harlow. He meant those things, but it seems to me now it was more, and that we all knew it. Everything was there and around us. We knew exactly who we were and exactly where we were going. It was grand.
Stephen King's a really good writer, guys. Those are people who have demeaned him and just said he's always just a John guy. And yeah, he's written many books that I think are just average or not that good. But when Stephen King is on, he can capture something about the human experience. And I have these moments in my life, just like, I always think of them as perfect moments. Like, that was a perfect moment. They don't last long. They're very special. You should treasure them.
Yep, 100%.
And now it's time to go get some food. And there's discussion of whether they should all go or whether they should send someone. And finally it comes up to flip for it. They get out their coins. They flip and they reveal 4 tails.
Oh, Jesus, man, that's a goocher. Oh, come on, Vern. That doesn't mean anything. No, man. Let's go again. No, man, a goocher. That's really bad. You remember when Clint Bracken and those guys got wiped out on Weed Hill in Durham? Billy told me they were slipping for beers. And they came up with a goocher just before they got into the car. And bang! They all got totaled. I don't like this. Sincerely.
The sincerely is my favorite part of the way Vern talks. Finally, we flip again, and Gordy loses.
Shut up.
I don't shut up.
Shut up. I grow up. And when I look at you, I throw up. And then your mother goes around the corner and she licks it up. Oh!
Because Gordy is the fastest wit in this group.
Yes.
Finding new and preferably disgusting ways to degrade a friend's mother was always held in high regard.
Cut to, we're at the little, local store, and there, behind the counter, is Bruce Kirby.
Yeah, Bruce Kirby. Fantastic actor. Was acting since the 1950s and things like The Phil Silver Show, Car 54, Where Are You? I Dream of Jeannie, Bonanza, Hogan's Heroes, a lot of TV shows, Kojak, MASH, so many ones into the 80s and 90s and even 2000s. His last credit is in an episode of Scrubs in 2007. He was also in The West Wing, Steve, The Sopranos, Days of Our Lives. But film-wise, he was in the Muppet movie as well in 1979, Sweet Dreams, the Jessica Lange movie there about Patsy Cline, Throw Mama from the Train, The Big Picture, which is that Kevin Bacon film about essentially the player before the player in 1989.
By the way, yeah, good. I haven't watched it in a long time, but I remember really liking that movie.
Yeah, Mr. Wonderful. And then his last film was 222, but he's also known for being Bruno Kirby's dad. He is Bruno Kirby's dad.
So I had no idea about that until working on this movie. And now looking at his face, I go like, oh yeah, that is Bruno Kirby's. And what's so sad is like, he outlived his son by like 15 years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's such a shame, man.
Yeah.
But he's great here. And I like this scene. It provides just a certain kind of like unsettling sadness for Gordy. We're touching base again with Gordy's pain.
Ain't you done any chances, brother?
Yes, sir.
Shame what happened to him. Bible says in the midst of life we are in death. Did you know that? I lost a brother in Korea. You look like your brother, Denny. People ever tell you that?
Sometimes.
So I think at the beginning of this scene, we're kind of like, oh, he's a nice guy. He's trying to connect with the kid. He's being sensitive.
Yeah.
And the sometimes, I think, from Gordy, I also think is really interesting because all of his pain comes from, I'm not my brother.
Right.
Yeah. And so I think he, wants to look like his brother, wants to be like his brother, but is also oppressed by the specter of his brother and that he's not his brother.
Right. It's that confounding thing that you're navigating. Like, I want to be like him, but I don't want to be compared to him. Yet I want to be better than, I want as good as him. It's a real mindfuck.
And now we go again to a flashback, sitting at the dinner table with Denny. It's blown out, overlit. By the way, the DP is Thomas Del Ruth, who did Fandango, The Breakfast Club, Quicksilver, a movie I haven't seen in forever.
I love Quicksilver. That'll go on my list, Steve, of 80s movies, favorite 80s movies.
I'm all for the 80s movies podcast. And I'm happy to appear with no research and no editing. It sounds great.
Yeah, absolutely.
Could be some scouts at the game tomorrow.
I don't know, Pop.
Dad, can I have the potatoes?
That's what I hear, son.
Are you going to see Jane after the game? I think she's a lovely girl.
Dad, can you please have the potatoes?
Dorothy, don't talk to the boy about girls.
Dad.
You shouldn't be thinking about girls. This is the biggest game of his life.
Here we have Gordy just trying to get some fucking potatoes,
Yeah.
being totally ignored. Dad shuts down mom, totally focused on this game, totally focused on his eldest son. And what does that eldest son do? He wants to put the focus back on Gordy.
Yeah.
When you're out there tomorrow.
Pop, did you read the story that Gordy wrote? Gordy wrote a story. It was really good.
What did you write, sweetheart?
And then Dad shuts that down.
Now, see, that's what I'm talking about. Football takes concentration. You start in on the girls and his mind's all over the place.
And then Denny, who is clearly an idealized character, which he's not in the book, by the way. He's several years older than this Dennis. He's actually in the Army, so he's in his 20s. And they're not connected. They're not close friends. It's a very different relationship. Yeah.
Okay.
Dennis leans into his brother and says, I really liked it. I thought it was great. And that's just everything Gordy needs to hear.
And I think it's a great flag because the mom eventually does give him the potatoes after Dad shut him down. So he gets his potatoes eventually. But I think this is such an interesting sequence because it's Gordy's flashback.
Yeah.
So we're going to see it a little more nostalgic, a little more like, my brother was the greatest and my dad ignored me. But my brother told me this great thing about my story, right? And this is how Gordy's going to see, because that's how our memories are sometimes. We just remember the things that really hurt us and the things that made us feel good. And sometimes we don't remember that it's kind of in the middle or in between. And so I like this as a flashback showing us the connection he has with his brother. And the whole time when we're seeing the dude talking about it in the store, he is slapping hamburger meat down or whatever he's doing. So it's that whole thing. But as you said, Steve, it's a window into the father's almost hatred of his son.
But by the way, Wil Wheaton also had an older brother. Sounds like he was not as supportive as Dennis is to Gordy. He was kind of the golden child from what I've heard. He was got all the praise, got all the stuff. And Wil Wheaton says that it was part of his sadness in relationship that the relation to his brother and how his parents related to his brother versus how they related to him that helped him bring Gordy to life.
Well, we do have a question from one of our patrons at the Rocha Says. And Stevie wants to know, what do you think really happened with Gordy's brother's car accident? From this flashback, it's very clear that the dad is putting a shit ton of pressure on his son, and his son is trying to deflect that pressure by talking about Gordy. The dad doesn't want him to be around girls like Jane. The dad wants him to go be this star. Is it possible that he killed himself in this car accident? Is it possible that he got careless behind the wheel in a moment of anger, frustration, pain, whatever, and this is how he took himself out, and the parents don't want to accept it?
So as soon as you started asking the question, I realized that was where you were heading. It had never occurred to me before. I never had the thought that he might have killed himself. And to me, my feeling from the very little we're presented of this person, he is the golden child who has all his stuff figured out. He's totally solid. And that's the character that I see. Now, it doesn't mean that someone can't present that way and have all sorts of turmoil underneath that they're hiding. In fact, it's very possible. But that's not how I ever saw it. It was more likely to me that he was out with Jane and there were beers and there was irresponsible things going on. What I think happens in the book, but I don't remember exactly, is that I think it was just a total freak accident driving a Jeep as part of a military exercise because he's in the Army, I think.
Oh, right.
I don't remember specifically, so don't quote me on that.
Right.
But yeah, I never saw it on suicide. How do you see it?
Well, I don't even mean suicide. I mean more like in a moment of young anger. The frustration, because his dad is like telling, the scouts are going to be there. And he looks really uncomfortable. He looks really uncomfortable. And it's like, what about Jane? Mom is like, no, you don't need girls. And so his dad is like controlling his life.
Yeah.
And
no, that's true.
So I wonder if maybe in a moment of like frustration or anger, maybe he didn't win the big game, right? Maybe he did, like something happened after that game. Maybe he didn't come through. Maybe the scouts weren't going to get him. And so now he's even disappointed his dad. The thing maybe he doesn't even love football, and he just did this to please his dad, and then it just all comes to a head. And things happen. So I don't know if I would say suicide, because that's more, I think more a matter of like just in a moment of anger, a moment of frustration, a moment of pain. He just goes, fuck it.
And you could do irresponsible stuff because you're angry that could lead to your death that isn't necessarily suicidal in any way.
And I think that's what I think is where I lean in. Not suicide, but that it was a moment of anger and frustration.
my feeling, I don't feel like that is in the movie.
Mm-hmm.
But actually, you saying that, I think that's really good in a way, because what your point is, like, here we have the 4 not golden children as our main characters.
Right.
Like, we have the kids who all feel like fuck ups in one way or another.
Yeah.
And are finding ways to go on and actually be pretty cool despite all those feelings.
Yes.
If Dennis is the guy who everybody sees as the golden child, and in fact his death is caused by the fact that he's got his own inner turmoil and all that stuff, I think that would add to this story. I don't, like I said, I don't see that as part of the film.
Right.
I don't. Yeah, but it might have been good. You know,
it would have been interesting to explore that, because it's like, well, how much guilt do the parents feel that because it might have been that the report says it looked like he, might have been intentional. Right. So I just think it would be interesting. So anyway,
a voice pulls them out of this flashback.
You play football? Do you play football?
No.
What do you do?
And that question is like, anything you do other than playing football has to be lesser than playing football.
Yeah. I mean, in these small towns, sometimes from back then, the sports were the biggest thing.
In the book, this guy is way more of a dick.
Oh, wow.
And multiple times tries to rip Gordy off. Literally puts his thumb on the scale, gives him the wrong change or something. And Gordy multiple times shuts this guy down.
Wow.
And calls him on his bullshit. And the guy, I don't remember if he yells at him or not, but he's like, "You're not welcome in my store anymore." And I'm like, Gordy is like heroic with this guy. And I really wish that had been in the movie.
Yeah.
I think that would have been a great little bit to put in the film.
So Gordy makes it back to the junkyard, expecting to find his friends. He's got their food. He's run his errands, and no one is around. And I think we pick up on the fact that something's going on before Gordy does.
Yeah.
Hey, you kid, what are you doing there? Come over here.
All of a sudden, all that memory of the scary junkyard guy and his scary dog Chopper who can sick balls has come back into our brain. Gordy takes off running. The guy's chasing after him, and we hear,
Sick him, boy.
Now, he said sick 'em boy, but what I heard was Chopper sick balls.
And then we see the friends are all on the other side of the fence calling him to come on. And then there's Gordy running full speed, who just lost a foot race to Chris, by the way.
Yeah, right.
And by the way, I'm sure Wil Wheaton is actually running full speed here. And it is a race, man. It is terrifying. He runs to that fence, climbs it, feeling that dog right on his tail, about to bite him, jumps over. And then we see Chopper.
Yeah, which is not anything like we were presented at all.
No, we expected a big Doberman, a Husky, some, German Shepherd, something scary with gnashing teeth. Here's a cute little dog.
That's Chopper.
Chopper was my first lesson in the vast difference between myth and reality.
Watching this film for our conversation again, I was struck by how much of the film has a Christmas Story energy.
Yeah.
Right? And by that I mean is like the idea of like things are blown up in our minds as young kids. But when we watch a movie as an adult, we're like, oh, okay, yeah, because that's how it was. That's what you thought. Everything was cataclysmic. Everything was larger than it was. Everything was too difficult to get over than it was. And you see a lot of energy of that in Christmas Story, and there's a lot of that here. And this is another example of how like the legend grows, but it's really not that big of a deal, and we kind of scare ourselves from youth onward. And by the way, this is a pattern that we take with us into adulthood, right? We catastrophize a lot of things. Just different things become Chopper. Different things become Chopper sick balls in our lives. And so it's fascinating how that stuff still resonates with us as we get into adulthood.
It's so funny that you said that, because I actually had that same thought about Christmas Story multiple times. And it might be because, we just did it on the show, so it's fresh in my mind. But like in particular areas, like the pinky swear was one I thought of, because it reminded me of like the double dare, the triple dare, the whole thing with the tongue on the pole,
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, exactly. So I was thinking, and what's so interesting, and they're both are voiceover movies where you hear an adult voice, but who still takes the kid life really seriously. Because the thing I think they're doing is they're saying, look, the kids don't fully understand the world, but the world that they understand is fully real to them and has completely real rules. Yeah. And the big difference to me is like, Stand By Me is serious. It has heaviness to it in the way that Christmas Story is fun,
Right. But there's still a bully in both, right? Kiefer Sutherland and Scott Farkas. And so there is that element. And both of them want to achieve something that they're told they can't have, right? Essentially, if they told their parents, we're going to go find a dead body, they would not be allowed to do so. No. Whereas Ralphie wants that BB gun, he's being told by everybody in his life that he cannot have it because he's going to hurt himself. So there are similarities that are interesting to look at. Both those films are 80s films as well. And in no way am I saying Rob Reiner copied or anything, because it's a Stephen King source material. But I think you can find some commonality in that, because I think the two guys who made both of these movies maybe grew up with that kind of remembrance of those times in their lives, the 1950s or 40s or 30s, as we get with Christmas Story,
I totally agree. And so now we're safe. Chopper's not really a threat. We're on the other side of the fence.
So cute,
and Teddy goes off screaming at that junk man.
Sonny, I'm gonna beat your ass teasing my dog like that.
Yeah, like she tried to climb over his fence and get me fat ass.
Don't you call me that, you little tin weasel peckerwood loony son.
What did you call me?
So here's the thing you don't learn until you become adult. If you're going to talk that shit, you better be ready to get that shit. And that's the thing. So when you're a kid, you're just going off on the adults. And Teddy's clearly an unhinged kid. We've seen a couple of moments where he's lost his mind and done stuff, especially with his own friends, right? We saw with Chris. So in this moment, Corey Feldman does such a good job. As you said, Steve, I think you said at the beginning of the show, this is the best performances for all of these actors in this movie. And Corey is so great here, how his face absolutely drops the minute this guy brings up his dad, and the way he brings up his dad. And there was the adrenaline of escaping from the dog, and that leads to the ball busting. This is a different kind of adrenaline.
Oh, yeah.
It's born of anger and shame and embarrassment, right? And this guy is leaning in on him about it. And by the way, adults did this all the time to kids. Hell, they're still doing it now. If you watch some of the footage you see out in the world lately, it's scary. So, yeah.
I know who you are. You're Teddy Duchamp. Your dad's a loony up in the nut house in Togus. He took your ear and he put it to a stove and he burnt it off.
If Chopper being a cute dog and not being the terrifying thing that they believed is one kind of betrayal of reality.
Yeah.
I think this grown man laying into this kid is another, where it's just like that, because you're just like, well, this shouldn't happen this way. And I think we talked before about the choices you make in the editing room.
Yeah.
The fact that they cut to a reaction shot from Chris, I think, is key at this moment.
Yeah.
Because Chris understands Teddy and what it means for someone to, diss his dad in this way.
Yeah, 100% agree.
And Teddy goes,
I think they all kind of sense it, but they focus on Chris for sure.
Yeah.
My father stormed the beach in Normandy.
He's crazier than a shithouse rat. No wonder you're acting the way you are, with a loony for a father.
You call my dad a loony again, and I'll kill you.
If Teddy was a grown man, does he mean those words?
Probably.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would think so. If he's had no therapy, and by the way the story ends at the end of the movie, where he ends up, it seems like he hasn't had too much therapy. I think he absolutely could possibly end up killing someone.
Loony.
Ah! I'm gonna rip your head off and shut down your neck! No! I'm gonna kill him!
Come on and try it, you little slimy bastard!
Chris is trying to get involved. Chris is trying to be the peacemaker.
Yeah, again.
And it is escalating. And I love that this adult is yelling at this kid. Like he's gonna actually fight this little kid.
Sure, you only outweighed by 500 pounds, fat ass!
I know your name. You're the chance. I know all you guys. And all your fathers are gonna get a call from me. Except for the loony up in Togus.
Oh, come on, man!
And Teddy charges again, screaming. I mean, Teddy's unhinged. He's totally lost it. And finally, Chris manages to pull him off. I agree with you. I think Corey is incredible in this moment because he has that angry, sobbing, crying, out of control rage going on.
Yeah. Because he's a kid and he's embarrassed, and it's his dad who he loves. And I don't know if his dad ever stormed the beaches of Normandy. I wonder if that's all kind of made up in his head, because his dad is someone who was born possibly or developed a mental instability, right? I mean, how much of that was addressed back in the 50s, people's mental capacities and mental whatever. So we don't know. Like, we only have Teddy's words, and Teddy is kind of an unreliable narrator of whether his father stormed the beaches of Normandy or not. You know, maybe his dad was just there on D-Day, but never ever stormed the beaches of Normandy. We don't know.
Well, and it's not just Teddy's an unreliable narrator. I think Dad's an unreliable narrator.
Right, exactly.
You know?
Yes.
I mean, Dad could have told Teddy all sorts of shit. And I just like, and what's so great about this movie is that it hits this perfectly. It doesn't go into exploring it, but the idea of like, okay, you're a little kid. The most important person in the world to you is your father, whose approval you most want, who's setting the rules for the environment that you live in, who is, you know, whether or not you get food or not is dependent upon this person. And this person has done one of the most hideous and horrible pieces of abuse to a child I can think of. I mean, pushing your kid's ear down on a hot stove is so fucking horrible. And so the person who he needs the most and who he wants respect and appreciation and approval from the most is the scariest person in his life.
Yeah.
Like, how do you reconcile that? And of course you can't,
Not as a child. It's a colossal, it's even hard to do as an adult. You know, it's such a colossal mindfuck as well, because we don't know if that's the excuse that guy used, his father used, to cover up him burning Teddy's ear. That he had an episode and thought he was, you know, a German guy rather, it's storming the beaches of Normandy. It might have been that, you know. So, you know, because we fought Germany and Japan in the war. So like, that's might have been what he used. So this kid holds on to that as a way of saying like, oh, my father didn't do this to me of sane mind. He did this to me when he was lost in some sort of PTSD episode. So I can't really blame him, you know. And most kids want to forgive their parents no matter what they do.
I have a friend whose stepfather was a veteran, served in Vietnam, had what we now would call PTSD, alcoholic, and my friend would tell stories of this guy having flashbacks.
Yeah.
And like there was one story about like holding his buddy's head in his lap. Like he was thought he was currently holding his buddy's head in his lap.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
One of my best friends growing up in Dale City, Richard, I'm not going to say his last name, Richard, his dad was a PTSD survivor from Vietnam. Not the same thing in terms of the stories. What he would talk about is the screams at night, the nightmares that would wake up the whole house. And I had that was my first experience with hearing anything, because my dad obviously didn't serve or do anything else. So to me, this was such a scare. And his dad was, you know, a decent fellow, kind of quiet, but you know, I never had any kind of relationship with him. I just would say hi when I'd go into his house and whatever. But like, he would tell me the stories of that too, Steve. So I'm sure there's a lot of people our age who had friends who experienced this, or people listening to us who've experienced this with their own fathers who served, you know?
So remember when I said that it was really important to Rob to do a bunch of rehearsals with these young actors because he wanted to do scenes that all took place in one shot?
Yeah.
Well, here we are. This walking away from the junkyard is a Steadicam shot. It's basically almost all in one shot. And you're asking child actors, particularly Corey Feldman, to be at the emotional max and to do it perfectly through a long scene. That's tough on adult actors, much less for kids who have to all deliver in this scene in one shot. It's really hard.
Especially when they're all essentially getting their big breaks through this movie. You know, they've done other things, some of them, but like, this is the big break, you know?
And then we hear this voiceover, which I find to be amazing.
I wondered how Teddy could care so much for his dad who practically killed him, and I couldn't give a shit about my own dad who hadn't laid a hand on me since I was 3. And that was for eating bleach under the sink.
So much in that line.
Yeah, it's, again, every situation is so different. You know, was it, like, for him, that line, Steve, gives you a window into his upbringing, which is essentially he's always been the second child, the forgotten child, the not cared about child by his dad. Like some fathers, when this is truth, I'll tell you, I think this is the fucking truth. I don't know if it happens as much now, but I do believe there are fathers, especially those macho fucking fathers, who, if they had a sensitive child, didn't know how to raise them and didn't know how to deal with them, and would sometimes just absolutely shun them, because it was so foreign to them, right? Yeah. What do you mean you don't like sports? What do you mean you don't like to do these manly things? What do you mean you're artistic? And so I think there is elements of that here because Teddy he's a writer, right? Not Teddy, sorry. Gordy's a writer, and his dad doesn't know what to do with any of that, right? Thinks he's soft or whatever. Whereas, his brother plays football. That's a man, and so it's that archaic shit. And so I guess in Gordy's mind, the fact that Teddy's father even touched him just to beat him was maybe in some fucked up way showing love, where his father doesn't even show him love, doesn't even touch him since he was 3 years old, which shows a lack of love in Gordy's mind.
There's a moment in The Breakfast Club, which always hits me very strongly, which I feel like you and I saw slightly differently, but we've heard about all their relationships with their parents, including Bender, who has the cigar burn on him and stuff. Yeah. So we know that that's physically abusive. And then they finally ask Ali Sheedy's character, as she's talking about her home life being unsatisfying, what do they do to you? And she says, they ignore me. Yeah. And everyone kind of goes, yeah. As that being ignored could be as terrible as abuse. And that's what Gordy's going through.
Because it's all relative, right? I don't get abused physically, but the way I do get abused is being ignored, feeling like I don't have a voice, which is a form of mental abuse. It really is. Now, whether it's valid or not in terms of like you should have a voice or not, that's a type of conversation, but it does feel that way when you're coming up as a young person because you want to kind of establish yourself. It is an inherent need. And it's amazing how many adults get amnesia about what they were like when they were a young adult or a teen, wanting to be heard, wanting to have a voice.
And Chris is always the peacemaker. He's always going to try. What an amazing character Chris is.
Why do you care what a fat old pile of shit like him says about your dad? He still stormed the beach at Normandy, right?
And Teddy doesn't want to be comforted quite yet. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
so he keeps going like, forget it, and arguing.
Forget it.
You think that pile of shit was at Normandy?
Forget it, all right?
You don't know nothing about your old man. He's just dog shit. Whatever is between you and your old man, he can't change that.
Forget it, all right? Just forget it.
And they walk. And it's so I've totally been Vern in one way or another, because Vern then tries to bring them back to singing the Paladin song, Like he's like, hey guys, hey, let's all cheer up. And it just doesn't fly at all.
Yeah.
And he finally stops.
Because this is how Vern knows how to deal with it, exactly. It's great. But I do love that Chris is because Chris is the one that Teddy pushed away, right? When they're doing the train jump. So the fact that I feel like they haven't skinned it until this moment.
Yeah.
This is the moment where they come back together as friends and he's forgiven him for the train theft because he's there to comfort him.
And then
and they all take moments throughout the movie to comfort each other. It's really fun.
And then Teddy, who is, I would say, of these four, the least self-aware and the most likely to go off, has a moment of real self-awareness.
I'm sorry if I'm spoiling everybody's good time.
And then Gordy says something I find super interesting.
I'm not sure it should be a good time. You saying you want to go back? No, but going to see a dead kid, maybe it shouldn't be a party.
And they all take that in. And I think, because it's funny, this is a coming of age story. This is a story about moving towards adulthood.
Yes.
That sentiment from Gordy is very adult. It's, we need to take this seriously.
It's a writer who looks at it differently, right? Because everyone else is just focused on the adventure. The writer is always focused on the meaning or the analysis or the theme of whatever's happening. They just see the world, writers see the world differently. And so, when he says that, I think it's such a perfect writer thing to say. We shouldn't be having a good time because what we're going to do is serious and we should pay it the seriousness and attention it deserves.
I think Chris definitely takes that in 100%. And I think Teddy really hears it too. And Vern also hears it, but he hears something completely different.
Like if he's really bad, like all cut up in blood and shit all over him, I might have nightmares. Come on, Vern. Like all guts and eyeballs over to jump and grab.
Shut up, Vern, goddammit!
I sent you an article. We should keep, and we can keep this but we're gonna do a short because Wil Wheaton recently did recorded a book on tape for this story. Like he recorded it for a celebration of the 40th anniversary of the release of the film, which is out in theaters, I think, as we're dropping this first part, Steve. But there is a great little moment in the article, and we'll probably bring it up again in the short, but I wanted to highlight it here, where Jerry O'Connell, in real life at this age shooting the movie, thought he was going to get fired off the movie because he kind of did some improv stuff. He kind of went off on his own. And when it was done, Rob Reiner came around and wanted to talk to him, and he thought, oh my God, I've messed it up like I messed it up at the house with my family. I'm going to get in trouble. So, but Rob said, it was amazing what you did. Keep doing that. So these moments with Teddy, I wonder how many of them are Jerry O'Connell and how many of them are scripted from the script. And that gives me a whole new way to look at the movie and look at how Jerry O'Connell's natural instincts as an entertainer, even at a young age, take over in these moments. So they're fun to see.
Not sure if you remember this, but there's a moment that you totally reminded me of from when we did Princess Bride, which is Wallace Shawn is really struggling with the part. And because the part is written as the Sicilian, and the original person they were going to cast was Danny DeVito, which makes sense to be the Sicilian. And Wallace Shawn is like, I just don't feel like this person. I can't figure out who they are. I don't know what it is. And Rob Reiner's direction was he walked up and said, no. And Wallace is going, and I don't think I don't think I'm even right for this part. And Rob Reiner's direction, I think this is so beautiful, which he says, no, you're perfect for this part because he's you. This is you. Yeah. And as soon as he says that, Wallace Shawn goes, oh, and all the stress went away and he could just play the part. That's the magic of an actor's director. It's giving you the freedom to be yourself. It's giving you the freedom to explore the role. That's what he gave to Jerry O'Connell in that moment. Like, no, I want you.
When you create a space of acceptance, it's amazing how much artists bring out of themselves to deliver what you need. It really is just part of that, because most artists are horribly insecure, feel like frauds, even the great ones. Daniel Day-Lewis has said it many times. I'm always waiting for them to find out that I'm a fraud. Daniel Day-Lewis. Yeah. So, it's always that thing that's coursing through. So if you create a space of acceptance, it's great. I was watching a Tom Holland interview on a YouTube short. And he was talking about Robert Downey Jr. And he said, like, when I auditioned for the role of Spider-Man, it was an 8-page scene, and I auditioned with Robert Downey Jr. And I realized with Robert Downey Jr. was improvising within the lines. Yeah. And so I realized I could not hang or beat Robert Downey Jr., but I could write his coattails and get to where I needed to get to. So I got the job. Then we get on set, and the 8 pages have been cut down to 2. And Robert Downey Jr. goes to the Russos and goes, hey, what's going on here? And they're like, well, it's a 140-page script. We thought we'd make some cuts. And Robert Downey Jr. said, no. You put these other 6 pages back in, because I guarantee you're going to want them back in. You're going to like this kid. You're going to like what the scene is all about. You can always cut it afterwards. Right. Trust me, shoot the scene because you're going to need it. And Tom said they used all of it, all 8 pages. So, that's the thing that you just never know on a set. If you create a space of acceptance and you shoot a little bit more, you can always cut. But let's see what they can make. Let's see what they can do. And so, it's great stuff.
I never heard that story. That's a fantastic story. And it's just, it's so, look, we know there are great movies made by directors who don't do that. Right. And I can't deny it. You and I were texting just last night about Apocalypse Now. Yes. Coppola is half and half. Yeah. Coppola totally wants to create a supportive environment for his actors, but he's also could be a tyrant and be crazy and all this stuff. And of course, there are other directors who don't. And this is what you just described, that Robert Downey Jr. story, the Rob Reiner stories. Like, that's what I want to do. I want to create a part of it. You know what part of it is? It's not that I can guarantee it'll give you a better movie. I actually can't, because they're great movies made by assholes.
Yes, right.
But I can guarantee it'll give you a better life. Living in that environment rather than living your life on a fucking Kubrick set. I don't want to live there.
Just read any Shelley Duvall's remembrances of that time on The Shining.
Yeah.
We'll let you know. That's why it frustrated me the other day, and I don't know if you're going to keep this in, where Bill Maher was doing one of his new rules, and he was talking about how we all just need to be able to get along with people we don't agree with. And he used movie examples about how certain actors hated each other, but they made a great movie. A director tortured this actor, but they made a great movie. And I'm like, this is the most horrible examples to use this kind of stuff. because you just stop there. You don't go further, which is, and it damaged them and their mental health going forward. And it damaged them and their experiences being on sets. And it fucked with them for the rest of their lives. No, it just stops at, they made a great movie. The result was great. So that's okay. And I just think it was such an irresponsible, stupid thing to say, because you and I have been very clear on this podcast. Yes, sometimes directors are shitty on sets, actors are shitty on sets, and they make great movies. But it's not the way it should be. And in the end, just because you made a great movie doesn't mean what happened was okay. And I was really fucking mad at him for not going further with that and just cherry picking the result to support his point of view, which I think is a good point of view. We should be able to get along with people who don't agree with us. But the idea that you want to use these fucked up processes as somehow an example of it being okay, I just think it's nonsense.
Yeah, it's so funny because when you started the story, I was like, well, I think that people should get along and learn how to be with people. I've been saying that for years. And then as you went to the example, the logic is actually exactly the reverse.
Right.
Right. It's like the point is not we could be assholes each other because it'll result in good things.
Right.
The point is we shouldn't be assholes to each other.
Right. Right.
Like, yeah. Well, and then what's so funny, and this really brings us back to the movie, is that these kids are going to find a way to work together despite these differences to overcome these things. And I think this last moment with Vern, I hadn't thought about it the first time I watched it, but as I was looking at it again, I was like, Teddy is in this place where he is the center of attention for something he really, really doesn't want to be in the center of attention.
Right.
Yeah. It's about his father, his ear, his biggest trauma there possibly is. He totally lost his temper. And even worse, he's been sobbing publicly in front of his male friends. Right. This is the worst. And he's apologized for ruining the trip. And then magical Vern comes along and takes all the attention away from him, essentially. And they can all turn and make fun of Vern. And Teddy's a little bit off the hook, you know?
Yeah. Whether accidentally or on purpose. Yeah, he's done the right move here. Yeah, interesting.
Yeah. And they walk off together and we're kind of back on our journey because like all great heroes' journeys that has these little, this is dealing with the siren or this is dealing with the Cyclops. We're on this part of this hero's journey and they walk off and we hear.
It was only 2:45, but it felt much later. It was too hot and too much had happened. We weren't even close to the Royal River yet. We were going to have to get moving if we were going to make some real miles before dark.
And as they walk off towards the Royal River, John, I think this is the perfect place to end part 1 of our exploration of Stand By Me. Of course, we'd love to hear your thoughts. We brought up a lot of stuff, and we'd love to hear how this relates to your childhood. Do you see your childhood experiences in this? You can visit us on our Facebook page or on Twitter, where we're Cine_Files, the Cine-Files podcast on Instagram. You can subscribe to the show on all the usual places if you haven't already. Then the new episode shows up in your feed and you get to listen to it right away. That's on Spotify or Apple Podcasts or YouTube. But if you don't like listening to the ads, and let's face it, I don't like listening to ads, you can skip them by subscribing either on Apple Podcasts for $4.99 a month or on Patreon. And on Patreon, we have a whole bunch of other stuff too, including asking questions of the show, which can appear in an episode. You've already heard some of those. And you can join the Cine-Files Advisory Board, where we chart the future of the Cine-Files. That's on patreon.com/the Cine-Files. And if you want to reach me, it's SR Morris on Twitter. How would people reach you, John?
Yeah, you can reach me at The Rocha Says on all social media, my YouTube channel, youtube.com/John Rocha Says. And although we don't like to listen to the ads, we appreciate the ads. We appreciate 100%. All the companies for supporting us. So please, if you do listen to the ads, make sure you use our codes. And I do want to say this. Please sign up for our Patreon because we're on a run of some incredible shorts lately. And if you're missing out on it for simply $5 a month, like a Starbucks coffee, a taco at Taco Bell, $5 a month, you can get a short every week where Steve and I are diving in to some topic or some subject. And I guarantee you it will be worth every penny of your $5. So I highly recommend you all to join our Patreon and get access to those shorts as well as all the other things that Steve laid out just a few seconds ago.
And I just want to highlight that one step further, which is when we came up with the plan of the Cinephile short, our plan was that they would be about 10 minutes.
Yes.
I don't think we've done a 10-minute Cinephile short in years. They average at least 25 minutes, and frequently, like the last one was like 50 minutes. So this is serious content every week for just $5 a month. So definitely check that out on Patreon. And for my partner, John Rocha, I'm Steve Morris, and we will see you for our continuation of our exploration of Stand By Me in the season of Rob Reiner.